Chapter 1265. The biggest difference between rising from the ashes and indestructible true fluid was that indestructible true fluid could only heal injuries, while rising from the ashes could allow Ling Han to recover to his peak condition. Just think about it. Two people were evenly matched and both were wounded in battle, both on the brink of death. However, one of them suddenly rose from the ashes and recovered to his peak condition. Wouldn't the other party only be able to cry? No wonder immortal phoenixes were the most top-tier immortal beasts. Just this ability alone was enough to make countless elites tremble in fear. Before they made a move, they would have to consider whether they could withstand the opponent's continuous attacks. Unfortunately, there was only a 1% chance of success at present. However, it had to be known that this was the most supreme and core secret technique of the Celestial Phoenix tribe. Being able to allow Ling Han to grasp a portion of it at the Sun-Moon tier was an astonishing feat. Ling Han didn't leave the Black Tower. Instead, he swallowed a berserk blood spirit pill and refined it under the reincarnation tree. 3 days later, his cultivation level reached the peak stage of the low extreme, and he would need another 1 or 2 months to stabilize his cultivation level, and he would be able to break through to the medium extreme. Of course, he had to comprehend under the reincarnation tree for these 1 or 2 months. Otherwise, without 20 or 30 years of accumulation, how could he touch the barrier to the next cultivation level? Ling Han didn't have time to break through at the moment. The auction was about to begin. He hadn't gone out for a long time either and planned to go out for a walk. On the other side, the old ginseng and rabbit couldn't bear the loneliness of the Black Tower and insisted on going out for some fresh air and relaxation. Most importantly, one wanted to steal spiritual medicines to eat, and the other had to be careful of the women in Wolffang City. Fortunately, this was Cloud Apex Planet, where demonic beasts and the spirits of the 5 elements lived in harmony with humans. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be able to return after leaving. Meanwhile, Ling Han came to a restaurant. He wanted to know if there had been any major events recently, and it was naturally the fastest way to gather information in restaurants. Many people like to blabber, and showing off exclusive information was actually a good way to make their presence known. He calmed down and listened, and soon he obtained a lot of information. Some people were bragging, saying that they had killed many elites of the Netherworld, but he was only at the Mountain River tier, and it was obvious how unreliable this claim was. Some people were talking about the auction this time, and the Realm Spirit Stone was also said to be as big as a bull's head. It was truly a rumor. Others talked about the 2 Realm Prodigy Gathering. Have you guys heard? It's almost time for the 2 Realm Prodigy Gathering. Of course. Those who can participate in the 2 Realm Prodigy Gathering are all supreme geniuses. They are super geniuses that only appear once in tens of thousands of years. Not just tens of thousands of years, but at least hundreds of thousands of years.
Oh, right.
Are we entering the Mountain River Forest or the Sun-Moon Valley this time? I remember that it was the Sun-Moon Valley last time, so it should be the Mountain River Forest this time. Actually, the Mountain River Forest is the fairest. It can truly show the difference between geniuses of different cultivation levels. Not necessarily. Some people have cultivated to perfection at the Mountain River tier, but they might not be able to do the same at the Sun-Moon tier. The more they talked, the more agitated they became, and they almost started fighting. Ling Han was confused, but the table beside him just so happened to be filled with an old man and a young man. The young man was just as confused as Ling Han, so the old man explained. The Mountain River Forest and the Sun-Moon Valley are both mystery lands in the 2 Realm battlefield, and they are very strange. No matter what cultivation level you are, even if you are a saint, your cultivation will be weakened to the Mountain River tier after entering the Mountain River Forest, and your cultivation will be restricted to the Sun-Moon tier after entering the Sun-Moon Valley. Only now did Ling Han come to a realization, and he breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. If they fought in the Mountain River Forest this time, then he would have cultivated to the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Mountain River tier, and also reached perfection in each of the previous cultivation levels. In a battle of equals, he would not lose to anyone. On the other hand, if they fought in the Sun-Moon Valley, he would naturally be at a great disadvantage against those who had cultivated to this level, and he might not even be able to withstand a single exchange. Of course, there were still less than 3 years, and he could continue to raise his cultivation level, but to reach the peak stage of the pinnacle level was very, very difficult. For there to be such a strange place, it should be caused by the conflict between the two worlds.
So, what if you are a saint?
If you are cultivating in this heaven and earth, you will have to be restricted by this heaven and earth, Ling Han said in his mind. Hey, 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 have you guys heard of something big? A man suddenly shouted loudly. He was asking if the others had heard, but his proud expression was clearly saying, "You guys don't know, right? I have exclusive news." What news? Many people asked. This man was dressed in black, and his foot-long hair was tied up. His chest was half naked, and there was a kind of valiant aura about him. When he saw that everyone's eyes were fixed on him, he couldn't help but feel a great sense of vanity in his heart. He raised his bowl of wine and began to drink in large gulps. Just the day before yesterday, a grandson of great General Xie went to the Purple Moon Army and wanted to take someone away. In the end, he was kicked out, and his face was almost swollen.
What?
Many people couldn't help but laugh. Is this person crazy? He actually dared to go to the Purple Moon Army to take someone away? Doesn't he know that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden is the most protective? Yet Ling Han was stunned. Great General Xie's grandson. Then it had to be Xie Donglai. He knew that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had come to the Two-Realm battlefield and was also in the Purple Moon Army. Hold on. Even Great General Xie couldn't stretch his hands into the Two-Realm battlefield. Although there was no secret in this world that would last forever, it was impossible that Xie Donglai could find the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maidens so quickly. Unless someone told on him, Ling Han immediately thought of Zhu Liyun. She was a close friend of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, so she should know some things about the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, including why she had come to the Two-Realm battlefield. Humph. Ling Han couldn't help but feel killing intent. Weren't you just pushing him into a pit of fire? The people at the neighboring tables couldn't help but shiver. Ling Han's killing intent was too frightening, and it also possessed a sliver of heaven's might, causing fear to rise from the bottom of their hearts. They all stood up to pay the bill, not daring to stay any longer. However, the others were not affected, and were still chatting loudly there. Who is that descendant of the Xie clan? Someone couldn't help but ask. The man in black clothes whetted their appetite, and then said, Xie Donglai. What? It's actually Xie Donglai. That's an extremely important existence among the younger generation of the Xie clan. That's right. He is only cultivated for a few tens of thousands of years, and is already in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. It is said that he has a chance to break through to the Heavenly Body tier within 1,000,000 years. Sigh, it would be great if I could break through to the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier within 1,000,000 years. Otherwise, I would have to straighten my legs and become a ghost. Haha, kill more demons of the netherworld, accumulate merit points, and after exchanging them for enough resources, breaking through to the medium extreme would definitely not be difficult. Everyone nodded. A great many people here had actually long since retired, but they still lingered here, unwilling to leave because they wanted to take a gamble and break through to a higher cultivation level. Some people had indeed succeeded, but even more people were left here forever, their corpses uncollected. Venerable Trinity should have obtained a fortuitous encounter here and successfully advanced into the Eternal River tier. Unfortunately, he was killed by a single punch from Hunyao. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden is really domineering, not even giving face to the Xie clan. Who doesn't know that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden is protective and loves her soldiers like they are her daughters? Even if Great General Xie personally came forward, he might not be able to make the Purple Moon Divine Maiden back down. What more when it's only Xie Donglai? Everyone nodded. What about me, Xie Donglai? A cold laugh rang out, and a tall and slender man suddenly appeared at the top of the stairs. His hands were clasped behind his back, and he exuded an aura that was unique to elites. Chapter 1266. The restaurant instantly fell deathly silent. That was Xie Donglai. even though everyone knew that it was forbidden to fight in Wolfang City, who was willing to be targeted by Xie Donglai. This could mean that they had become enemies with Great General Xie. How many people would be willing to bear such a terrifying consequence? To say nothing of anything else, as long as news spread that they had offended the Xie clan, how many people would be willing to associate with them? Moreover, Xie Donglai was an elite at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and he was even more so a prodigy. He had a very high chance of advancing to the heavenly body tier. Just him alone was enough to cause many people to be willing to offend him. Xie Donglai's eyes swept over the crowd, and no one dared to meet his gaze. He was like an invincible emperor. He chuckled coldly. They actually dared to gossip about him behind his back? These lowly commoners were really ignorant. If it weren't for the fact that this was Wolfang City, he would have definitely killed everyone here.
Huh?
He faltered slightly because there was a young man who was still leisurely drinking wine, as if he hadn't noticed his presence at all. This young man was very eye-catching, like a crane among chickens. This was because the tables around him were all empty, and compared to the bustling scene in the restaurant, he seemed completely out of place. Xie Donglai strode over, and there were actually 2 elders following behind him. However, they maintained a considerable distance from Xie Donglai and followed him from afar as if they weren't traveling together at all. He sat down opposite Ling Han, and the aura of the consummate level spread out, giving Ling Han a powerful pressure. Ling Han acted as if he hadn't seen this, and killing intent was already boiling in his heart. However, firstly, he couldn't kill Xie Donglai at the moment, and secondly, it wasn't convenient to do so here. Thus, he was only thinking about how to make this guy suffer a little. Since he dared to pester his wife, there was naturally no reason for him to let him off lightly. "Sir, how should I address you?" Xie Donglai asked, a hint of surprise in his eyes. This was because this young man was actually unfazed by his aura. He was clearly only at the peak stage of the low extreme, so how could his soul be so resolute? "And I ba," Ling Han replied casually. Xie Donglai's IQ was obviously very high, and a furious expression immediately appeared on his face. This brat actually dared to mock him. He humphed and said, "Sir, is it really okay to insult others as soon as you open your mouth? Idiot, you sat down without being invited. If I don't scold you, who am I going to scold?" Ling Han scoffed. He had not wanted to come into conflict with Xie Donglai so quickly, but who asked Xie Donglai to ask for a scolding from him? Xie Donglai's beautiful single phoenix eye narrowed involuntarily, exuding an almost tangible killing intent. This young man was truly audacious. He even dared to insult him. He was the eldest grandson of the Xie family, so he didn't really have any scruples. He wanted to make a move as soon as his killing intent rose. "Young master," the 2 elders said softly to Xie Donglai. They had originally been standing at the foot of the stairs. However, they both took a step forward and arrived behind Xie Donglai. "If you fight in Wolfang City, you will have to pay back 10 times the amount of damage you've caused." Of course, if he killed someone, he would only have to pay with his life. He wouldn't whip the corpse. This was a rule that several Eternal River tier elites had worked together to formulate. Even if Xie Donglai violated it, he would similarly not be spared. Though Great General Xie's reputation was very useful, Xie Donglai did not have that kind of prestige. If it was Great General Xie who killed someone here, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden and the others would probably only protest a little. They definitely wouldn't shed all pretense of cordiality with Great General Xie. Similarly, even if the Wolfang City killed Xie Donglai, Great General Xie similarly wouldn't fall out with several Eternal River tier elites for the sake of a descendant. Thus, it was better to abide by some rules. Xie Donglai naturally understood this logic and could only suppress his anger. His heart was exploding with fury. Since he was young, there had really been very few people who dared to disobey him like this. Even if there had been, grass would have already grown on their graves. First, there was a heavenly phoenix maiden that dared to run away from her marriage, and now there was a young man that dared to insult him. Was this world about to be turned upside down? He stood up and said, "Sir, I'll remember you." With his eyesight, he naturally could tell that Ling Han was currently using a disguise, but that was fine. What he recognized was Ling Han's aura. This was something that was very difficult for cultivators to change, unless they changed to cultivate another cultivation technique. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "You should have scrammed long ago. You're affecting my appetite." Xie Donglai's expression involuntarily darkened, and he wanted to fly into a rage again. However, he was a prodigy of this generation after all, so he forcibly suppressed his impulse. He only felt that he couldn't stay here any longer. Otherwise, he would explode in fury. Cultivators should settle debts of gratitude and enmity as they pleased, and if they were displeased, they should use their fists. Holding it in like this made him feel very uncomfortable. He turned and left. Meanwhile, the two elders stared at Ling Han for a good while, and then also left. The restaurant gradually regained its sound of conversation, but after the incident just now, everyone's voices had also become much quieter. As they spoke, they walked toward Ling Han. They all felt that this person was extremely audacious, actually daring to oppose the Xie clan. An elder shook his head and said, "He's still young after all and can't control his temper. Right now, this is Wolfang City, so he naturally doesn't dare to make a move. However, can he hide in Wolfang City for the rest of his life?" He felt that Ling Han's actions were far too unwise. Ling Han hadn't come here to eat or drink in the first place. Instead, he had come here to understand the recent events. Seeing this, he didn't have any intention of continuing to stay here. He paid the bill and then returned to the auction house. There were only 2 days left until the auction. Meanwhile, the old ginseng and rabbit were like fish in water. They spent their days outside, and neither of them was willing to come back. However, Ling Han wasn't worried. These two were both incredibly slippery, and unless a heavenly body tier elite made a move, it would really be impossible to capture them. 2 days quickly passed, and Ling Han brought the realm spirit stone to the front hall. He had already handed the alchemical pills to the auction house, but the value of the realm spirit stone was too great, so he kept it by his side and would only hand it over on the day of the auction. He came to the front hall and found a worker, asking him to inform the person in charge of the Jin clan. Just as he was waiting, he saw a familiar figure appear. Who else could it be but Xie Donglai? With Xie Donglai's status and wealth, it wasn't strange for him to participate in this kind of auction. Moreover, he was currently at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, so he definitely urgently wanted to break through to the Heavenly Body tier, or even the Pinnacle level. Thus, he was determined to obtain this palm-sized realm spirit stone. When Xie Donglai arrived at Ling Han, his handsome face immediately darkened. He chuckled coldly and said, "The Gold Origin Auction House is really becoming more and more despicable these days. Can any random person come here?" Xie, are you referring to?" A worker from the auction house was following beside Xie Donglai. Because his status was relatively high, the auction house also attached more importance to him and had sent out a person of considerable status. This person's name was Jin Xian, and he had always wanted to climb up and obtain a higher status. Thus, Xie Donglai had become the person he wanted to curry favor with. If he could form a connection with the Xie clan, his status in the clan would definitely skyrocket. "I hate this brat." Xie Donglai pointed unceremoniously at Ling Han. "I understand." Jin Xian nodded and said to the workers on his left and right, "What are you all standing around for? Hurry up and chase this person out." He hadn't seen Ling Han before, so he didn't know that Ling Han was the big customer who was supplying the realm spirit stone this time. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have said such words. But now he had made a huge mistake. Chapter 1268. Young Master Han Jinming actually called this young man Young Master Han? One had to know that even when facing Xie Donglai, Jinming only casually called him Young Master Xie and didn't take him seriously. But facing Ling Han, he first clasped his hands in greeting and then called him Young Master Han. How much face was this? What he didn't know was that Jinming didn't have to be so polite, but who asked him to kick Ling Han out. Now, he wanted to invite Ling Han back again, so how could he not be polite? He couldn't help but be shocked. Thinking back to when Ling Han asked him if he would regret it, he naturally scoffed, but now he really regretted it.
Who was this young man?
Why did Jin Ming hold him in such high regard? Lord Jin. Ling Han immediately stood up. Jin Ming was a heavenly body tier elite, so if he sat casually, it would be too arrogant. Jin Ming nodded and said, I'm really sorry, I didn't manage my subordinates well, and caused young Master Han to suffer. Hee. Ling Han only smiled and looked at Jin Xian and asked, Who is this? Jin Xian couldn't help but grimace, thinking, I just kicked you out. How can you not recognize me after turning around? This guy is clearly mocking me. If Jin Ming wasn't here, he probably would have slapped him. After cultivating for more than 2 million years, he had also reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. In his eyes, suppressing a low extreme was naturally a very easy and pleasant thing. Now, however, his expression darkened. What did Jin Ming say? Jin Xian, apologize to young Master Han, Jin Ming said in a low voice. Here it came, as expected. Jin Xian was unwilling to accept, and said, May I ask Lord Jin Ming, where did I go wrong? If he casually apologized, where would he put his face? The other party wanted face, so he didn't want it either. Although Jin Ming's status was higher than his, he was also a member of the Jin clan, so he could still disobey unreasonable orders. Otherwise, if this matter was brought to the clan's law enforcement hall, who would be able to stand? Humph. Jin Ming sneered. He really wanted to slap this idiot to death. He didn't have any ability and only knew how to fight for power. He didn't see the big picture at all, and his vision was frighteningly narrow. He said, This is young Master Han. He is the person who provided the realm's spirit stones for this auction. Jin Xian's heart shook. Only now did he understand why Jin Ming valued Ling Han so much. It turned out that he was a big client. It could be said that the reason why this auction was so grand was because of the palm-sized boundary spirit stone. This was because the larger the realm spirit stone, the more complete the laws within it would be, and the easier it would be for a martial artist to comprehend it. Therefore, even if 10 realm spirit stones added together were as big as this one in terms of value, it was still far from being worth it. However, the other party was only a seller. Was there a need to give him such a high standard? The other party was only lucky to have obtained such a large piece of realm spirit stone. Was there a need to lower the price? Hurry up and apologize. Jin Ming was getting a bit impatient, and he wanted to chase him back to the main clan. Keeping such an idiot by his side was just more of a hindrance than a help. Jin Xian's expression flickered between red and green. However, he still compromised and said, I've offended you just now. Please forgive me, young Master Han. If he angered Ling Han and cancelled the auction for the realm spirit stones, the Jin clan would undoubtedly become the laughingstock of the world. Moreover, as one of the main culprits, he would definitely not be able to escape the clan's punishment. Thus, after considering this, he still backed down. Ling Han shook his head and said, I don't know you. Jin Xian couldn't help but fly into a rage. The meaning of Ling Han's words was very simple. He didn't accept his apology. He was merely at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. What did he have to be so arrogant about? Jin Ming spoke up and said in a low voice, Jin Xian, if you chased a level 8 alchemist out of the auction house, what do you think you should do to appease him? Jin Xian faltered upon hearing this. What did Jin Ming mean? Could it be that Ling Han was a level 8 alchemist? What a joke. How old was this guy? He was definitely not over 1,000 years old. He could be considered a prodigy in martial art, but if he was a grandmaster of alchemy, how could one improve in alchemy? One had to refine cauldrons of alchemical pills one after another. That was a matter of time. It was completely different from martial art. If one was lucky enough to eat a divine pill, they might immediately jump from a mortal to the heavenly body tier. A level 8 alchemist who is not even 1,000 years old. What a joke. Do you think I'm joking with you? Jin Ming smirked coldly. If that weren't the case, how could he possibly treat Ling Han with such respect? So what if he was a big seller? The gap between the sun-moon tier and the heavenly body tier was as wide as the heavens and earth. Jin Xian's heart jolted. If Jin Ming was joking with him, that would be a joke in itself. Could it be that Ling Han was really a level 8 alchemist? His expression changed drastically. If news of him kicking a level 8 alchemist out of the auction house spread, he would really lose a layer of skin. Alchemists had a transcendent status. Furthermore, this group was relatively united. If you offended an alchemist, especially if you offended him for no reason at all, the entire group of alchemists would view you as an enemy. At that time, not a single alchemist would be willing to sell their alchemical pills to the Gold Origin auction house. That would be a massive blow to the clan. And as the Fuse, the main culprit, he would definitely be severely punished by the clan. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but shiver. His legs weakened, and he knelt down, saying, "Young Master Han, I was blind. Everything is my fault. Please forgive me." He continuously kowtowed, tears and snot streaming down his face. Jin Ming was so furious that he almost slapped this guy to death. He had asked Jin Xian to apologize, but this wasn't the way he had done it. Now that he was kneeling, not only was he losing face, but he was also losing face for the Jin clan. This idiot, he was really an idiot. He definitely couldn't stay here any longer. "Oh, so it's you." Ling Han clapped his hands. It was as if he had suddenly remembered who Jin Xian was. Jin Xian wiped away his cold sweat. It seemed like he had managed to deal with this. As long as Ling Han stopped being stubborn and let the auction proceed smoothly, he would apologize and pretend that this matter had never happened. However, he didn't know that Jin Ming had already sentenced him to a death sentence. It wouldn't be long before he would be forced back to the main clan. With a few words of criticism, he would no longer be able to make a name for himself in the Jin clan. He would only be able to live a mediocre life. "Young Master Han, please." Jin Ming couldn't be bothered to be angry, and he smiled at Ling Han. "My lord, please." Ling Han was also very polite. The two of them walked side by side towards the auction house. Ling Han deliberately lagged behind to show his respect for an elite of the heavenly body tier. This made Jin Ming very satisfied. This young man wasn't arrogant because of his talent, nor did he push his luck. Meanwhile, Jin Xian followed behind. He still had to properly establish a relationship with Ling Han and curry favor with him. In his eyes, now that Ling Han had the halo of a level 8 alchemist, his value instantly skyrocketed. Chapter 1269. Jin Ming was a powerful figure, after all. Seeing that Ling Han was no longer venting his anger, he took the realm's spirit stone and left first. Meanwhile, Jin Xian eagerly accompanied Ling Han, wanting to serve him well. A level 8 alchemist was very, very awesome. Ling Han was much clearer than Jin Xian. Jin Ming clearly looked disgusted, so it was clear that Jin Xian couldn't stay here for long. Thus, he couldn't be bothered to deal with Jin Xian and only dealt with him casually. "Young Master Han, please." Jin Xian wore a fawning smile as he respectfully led Ling Han to the Earth-grade private room on the 3rd floor. In the Gold Origin auction house, private rooms were divided into 2 levels. One was the Heaven grade, and the other was the Earth grade. The Heaven grade was basically always empty because only Eternal River tier elites had the right to sit inside. He was an elite of the Eternal River tier, and not his descendant or successor. The Earth grade had a wider range. For example, the descendants of Heavenly Body tier elites, Eternal River tier elites, or those with special achievements in alchemy or tool refinement. Thus, there were only a few Heaven grade rooms, but there were as many as 2 levels of Earth grade rooms. But since there were 2 levels, there was a difference. The upper level was definitely slightly better. Jin Xian led Ling Han to the Earth grade private room on the higher level, the same as Xiedonglai's. This showed how much importance he attached to Ling Han.
Creak.
The door of a private room opened, and a handsome young man walked out.
It was Xiedonglai.
He saw that Jin Xian and Ling Han had come together, and especially that Jin Xian was half a step behind with a fawning expression. This scene instantly caused him to be dumbfounded, and his mind couldn't process what was going on. What was going on? Wasn't this guy chased out? Why had he returned? Furthermore, he looked like he had been personally invited back by Jin Xian.
Gasp.
This two-faced guy had just been calling him brother and saying all kinds of things about taking care of each other, and now he turned around and sold him out. He was too fucking shameless. Xie Donglai's expression immediately darkened. He humphed and said, "Brother Jin, I need an explanation." A conflicted expression appeared on Jin Xian's face. He didn't want to offend Xie Donglai either. However, Ling Han and Xie Donglai were opposing each other, so he could only choose one of them. If he tried to curry favor with both of them, then he would definitely end up empty-handed. He gritted his teeth. Since Xie Dong was already here, he could do whatever he wanted. "Haha, what explanation do I need?" he said stubbornly. "What relationship do I have with Xie?" Xie Donglai couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "She's drawing a clear line between us so quickly?" He was both angry and curious. It was impossible for Jin Xian to fall out with him for no reason. For a petty person like him, he would only turn against the wind when there was a profit to be made. In that case, Ling Han should have a powerful background. But what was his background? He was even more powerful than him, the descendant of General Xie. He finally revealed a trace of caution towards Ling Han. To be able to become an extremely important member of the younger generation of the Xie clan, not only did he have talent, but he was also extremely intelligent. "Who are you?" he asked. Jin Xian immediately took the lead and said, "This is Ling Han, young Master Han." Young Master Han is a level 8 alchemist. Providing realm spirit stones could only mean that Ling Han was a big customer and there was no increase in his status. However, it was different for a level 8 alchemist. Oh. Xie Donglai's expression changed slightly. Such a young level 8 alchemist. The status of alchemists was extraordinary and was half a head higher than that of their corresponding cultivators. And he was a martial art prodigy, so he naturally didn't have to pay too much attention to alchemists of the same level. However, Ling Han was also an alchemy prodigy, and this kind of prodigy was even rarer, so he was naturally more valued. There was no lack of martial art prodigies in this world, and one would pop up from time to time. However, alchemy and tool method were different. These required the accumulation of countless years, and it was extremely difficult for a prodigy to appear. No wonder Jin Xian wanted to change sides. However, did he not know that he was not as simple as a martial art prodigy, but also the descendant of great General Xie? He had an eternal river tear supporting him from behind. However, why did the name Ling Han sound a little familiar? "So, he's also an alchemist," Xie Donglai said with a cold smirk. However, no matter how arrogant he was, he dared not mock alchemists because this group possessed extremely great power. If he rashly offended this group of alchemists, he would probably be criticized when he returned, and might even be banished to the cold palace. "A good dog doesn't block the way," Ling Han said calmly. Xie Donglai was tongue-tied. You actually dare to call me a dog?" However, it was true that he was standing in the middle of the road, blocking the path of Ling Han and Jin Xian. There was nothing wrong with saying that, though his choice of words was a little too harsh. "Then Grandmaster Ling has also been affected by the Realm Spirit Stone, right?" Xie Donglai decided to avoid mentioning Ling Han's identity as an alchemist. This was a more sensitive matter, and it was best not to cause a conflict in public. When no one was around, he would secretly kill him, and then wouldn't that solve the problem once and for all? A level 8 alchemist had come to the auction house at this time, and 99% of it was because of that palm-sized realm spirit stone. That was a precious treasure that could help one comprehend Tao. In terms of wealth, such a young level 8 alchemist was definitely no match for him. A hint of a smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he said, "So what?" "Haha, with me here, you'd better give up," Xie Donglai said haughtily. "As long as I make a move, that realm spirit stone will definitely be mine." Right now, he could only use this method to deal a blow to Ling Han.
Pooh.
Jin Xian almost laughed out loud. He hurriedly covered his mouth with his hand. You don't you know yet? That realm spirit stone was auctioned by Ling Han. The fiercer you snatched it, the fiercer you gave him money. He had seen suckers before, but He was the first one to be so pleased with himself and feel that he was bursting at the seams. Ling Han's expression did not change, and he said, "That's not necessarily true." "Stupid bird, are you sure you have the wealth to do that?" "Stupid bird." Xie Donglai's face twitched. Just then, Ling Han had insulted him as a dog, and now he was insulting him as a bird. This brat was truly hateful. He chuckled coldly in his mind. You can't stay in Wolfang City forever. The moment you leave, it'll be the moment you die. He had made up his mind to show off his prowess in front of Ling Han after winning the bid for the realm's spirit stone. After this thought flashed through his mind, he retreated into the private room and let Ling Han and Luo Bingyan pass. Ling Han strode past. When he passed the gate, he said, "You know when to advance and when to retreat. You can be considered a good dog." Wuxia Donglai almost drew his saber and attacked. Fortunately, there were two old men in the private room who forcefully pressed him down. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to endure it. As a descendant of the Xie family, he was used to messing around. Now, he even had to tie his hands and feet when he wanted to kill someone. He felt so fucking vexed. We have to kill this guy, Xie Donglai thought to himself. Then, he would return to the imperial capital and ask Great General Xie to act and think of a way to get the Heavenly Phoenix, Maiden, back. This slut dared to run away from the wedding. Humph, how is he going to deal with her? Chapter 1270. Ling Han entered the private room, and Jin Xian naturally followed him in as well. He chatted with him here and there, trying his best to find a common topic of conversation. However, when it came to martial art, though his cultivation level was slightly higher, his understanding of the regulations of heaven and earth was far less profound than Ling Han's. When it came to alchemy, he was completely a layman, and when it came to ambition, he was only filled with selfish desires. How could they talk about going together? There was no helping it, so he could only talk about things that men would definitely be interested in. For example, he had just gone to the Jade Spring Pavilion a few days ago, and how impressive her martial arts were, which made him feel like he was walking on air the next morning. In Wolfang City, there were naturally brothels. Furthermore, the girls working there were all genuine immortals, at least at the Mountain River tier. However, they clearly had this kind of ability, so why did they do such things? Money came quickly. All the men who made a living here had their heads tied to their waists at all times. Thus, their hearts were slightly twisted, and under great pressure, they naturally wanted to vent. Moreover, as long as they didn't die here, the profits they could earn were also very great. Merit could be exchanged for large amounts of resources, and picking up a realm spirit stone was even more profitable. Thus, most of the men here were also generous with their money. Selling here, firstly, was safe, and secondly, the income was astonishing. Naturally, many women were willing to be oppressed by thousands of men. Otherwise, where could a woman at the Mountain River tier get so many cultivation resources? Ling Han's thoughts ran wild, and he deliberately spaced out because Jin Xian really didn't have much depth. He actually began to talk about the details of prostitution, vividly, and his spittle flew everywhere. Moreover, his voice became louder and louder, and even the private room couldn't hear him. Noisy. With a cold humph, a white jade-like hand appeared out of thin air and slapped at Jin Xian. Pa! There was a crisp sound, and Jin Xian instantly fell silent. He covered the corner of his mouth, his face filled with shock. He had been directly struck dumb. One had to realize that no matter how unbearable his character was, he was still an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, but the other party hadn't even appeared, and a slap from who knew where had knocked out all his teeth. If the other party really wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be difficult for her to kill him with a single slap. Moreover, the person hadn't appeared, so who could prove that it was her who had killed him? It was her because the hand was white and slender. It should be a woman's hand. Moreover, that clear rebuke was clearly a woman's voice. Ling Han was also shocked. He couldn't figure out where the hand had come from. Of course, this hand wasn't a physical one. Instead, it was formed from the condensed power of Pali by an elite. However, It was still able to appear as if it was right in front of their eyes, even though they were separated by a wall. Moreover, it was capable of ripping out the teeth of an elite at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. This power was far too terrifying. At least the heavenly body tier. Ling Han secretly compared this person to Empress Luanxing, yet he was completely unable to determine who was more powerful. This was because they were both much more powerful than he was. Two great seas were placed before his eyes, and both were boundless. How could he know which one was bigger? Moreover, this person's control of strength was extremely precise. After a single slap, his origin energy just happened to disperse, and it didn't leave behind a trace of fluctuation. Thus, if this person wanted to kill someone, it would be as easy as flipping his hand, and it would be impossible to pursue the matter. If his opponent was at the heavenly body tier, then he would probably have to be at least in the medium extreme to be able to suppress him like this. However, considering that this was the gold origin auction house, and he still dared to attack without any reservations in someone else's territory, the status of this person could possibly be even higher. Jin Xian was stunned by the slap. He had suffered such a huge loss, yet he actually didn't seek out Jin Ming for help. Instead, he slumped onto the chair as if he had become stupid. Ling Han was also happy to have some peace and quiet.
He closed his eyes and took a small nap.
He was thinking whether there was any way to make Xie Donglai stay here forever. Not long after, the auction began. Since it was an auction, it was naturally impossible that only one item would be auctioned. That large realm spirit stone was only the finale item and would be sold at the end. There were also many other good items for sale, such as various alchemical pills, godly metal, god tools, and even cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques. These were also very valuable. There were a few items that even Ling Han was interested in, but when he thought about it, any improvement would be inferior to the Divine Demon Sword, so he suppressed his desire and prioritized raising the Divine Demon Sword to level 6. He was also about to break through to the medium extreme. Only when the god tool was at the same cultivation level as his own would he be able to use it more easily. The alchemical pills that he provided were also being auctioned, and they were quite popular. That was because the quality of his alchemical pills was too good. The same alchemical pill could have an additional 20%, 30%, or even 50% effect, so it naturally became a hot topic for many people. Ling Han made some calculations. Merely the sale of these alchemical pills would bring him a relatively generous profit. However, compared to the Realm Spirit Stone later, the difference was far too great. When the auction was about halfway through, that small Realm Spirit Stone was first taken out for bidding. After a fierce battle, this Realm Spirit Stone was sold for a high price of 4 million true origin stones. This was extremely astonishing. Normally speaking, a Realm Spirit Stone of this size could only be sold for around 3 million. However, it had to be noted that things like Realm Spirit Stones had always been priceless. Thus, once there was a battle, it would not be strange for a high price to appear. After this round of bidding, everyone could guess that the final Realm Spirit Stone would definitely be sold for an astonishingly high level. It was said that it was palm-sized, at least 10 times larger than this one. Being 10 times larger didn't just mean that it was 10 times more expensive. As mentioned before, the larger the Realm Spirit Stone, the more complete the regulations of heaven and earth would be, and the price would increase by at least 10 times. 300 to 400 million. After this price flashed through everyone's minds, many people sucked in a breath of cold air. This price was really ridiculously high. However, Ling Han was filled with anticipation. Raising the quality of his Divine Demon Sword would require a vast amount of godly metal, and purchasing godly metal would require a large number of true origin stones. He wanted nothing more than to sell this Realm Spirit Stone for 20 billion or 30 billion. Time slowly passed, and the auction was also nearing its end. Finally, that large Realm Spirit Stone was brought out. 10 million. 20 million. The moment this treasure appeared, it immediately triggered a fierce bidding war. There was no need to fan the flames, and the price soared rapidly. Of course, this was also because the current price was too low, and it was far from the bottom line that everyone was willing to pay. The price continued to soar, and when it reached 200 million, the number of people bidding instantly decreased by more than half. However, as long as there were 2 people who didn't give up, the price could naturally continue to climb. Ling Han was extremely satisfied. His expectations were already set at 200 million, and now, even a little bit more made him unable to contain his joy. However, after reaching this price, there were fewer and fewer people bidding, and the increase in the price also became smaller and smaller. Thus, after a long time, the price finally broke through the 300 million mark. This was more or less the final price of this realm spirit stone. 310 million. Xie Donglai's proud voice traveled out from a few rooms away. Chapter 1272. With the purple moon divine maiden's appearance, everyone naturally could only step back and give way to this elite. Xie Donglai stared at Ling Han, thinking that though he didn't win the realm spirit stone, the other didn't either. Furthermore, he lost to an eternal river tier elite, so this was a matter of course. After the purple moon divine maiden completed the payment, Jin Ming personally walked towards Ling Han, handing over a spatial bag, and said, "Young Master Han, this is the auction money. It's a total of 384 million true origin stones."
Pooh.
Xie Donglai immediately spluttered. Hold on, Ling Han wasn't the buyer, but the seller. Over 300 million. What did this mean? That large realm spirit stone was sold by Ling Han. Otherwise, how could he have earned over 300 million? His expression changed drastically, feeling as if someone had given him a heavy slap, incredibly uncomfortable. So it turned out that he had been the one causing the most trouble all along. He was brimming with confidence when he said that he would obtain the realm spirit stones and show Ling Han his heroism. However, Ling Han was the seller of the realm spirit stones. He continued to raise the price, yet in reality, he was working for Ling Han's benefit. Because of this, he had even offended an Eternal River tier elite. He really was an idiot. Xie Donglai didn't reflect on himself at all, only feeling that Ling Han was too despicable. All along, the other knew everything, yet didn't say anything, making him look for trouble. Despicable, despicable, despicable. He was the descendant of great General Xie and had the background of an Eternal River tier elite. So, what if the other was a level 8 alchemist? Compared to him, he wasn't even qualified to carry his shoes. Ling Han put away the spatial bag, not bothering to check its contents. "Young Master Han, why don't you count it?" Jin Ming asked with a smile. "I believe you, my lord," Ling Han said with a smile. Jin Ming nodded. Though the Gold Origin Auction House was known for its integrity, and there had never been a precedent of deceiving their customers, almost 400 million true origin stones was an astonishing wealth. Even heavenly body tier elites might be tempted, and it wouldn't be strange for them to play some tricks. But Ling Han trusted him so much, so he couldn't help but be very satisfied, feeling that this young man had great potential. "Are you that alchemist?" Purple Moon Goddess suddenly asked Ling Han. "I am indeed an alchemist." Ling Han nodded. "I heard that you're already at the 8th level," the Purple Moon Goddess asked again.
Yes.
Ling Han didn't waste any more words. It was better not to play any tricks in front of such an expert. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden showed an expression of admiration and said, "Your real age should not have reached 50, right? Not only have you advanced into the peak stage of the low extreme of the Sun Moon tier in martial art, you have also reached level 8 in alchemy. This achievement is probably enough to look down on the whole immortal realm."
What?
Jin Ming and Xie Donglai both paled in shock. Their first reaction was that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden was wrong. How could there possibly be such a young martial art genius and alchemy grandmaster? Under 50, unthinkable. Utterly unthinkable. But would an Eternal River tier elite be mistaken? Yet Ling Han's heart clenched. Elites were elites, after all. He was young, everyone knew this, but he could only determine that Sun Moon tiers were below 1,000 years old, and Heavenly Body tiers could only determine that Sun Moon tiers were below 100 years old. But she further limited it to below 50 years old. Putting aside the difference of 50 years, The low extreme of the sun-moon tier possessed a lifespan as high as 1,000,000 years, and being able to make such an accurate judgment, her judgment was really frightening. If this continues, you might be able to advance into level 15 alchemist within 1,000 years. At that time, even I will have to ask you to concoct alchemical pills for me, the Purple Moon Divine Maiden said. Level 15 alchemist Ling Han calculated in his mind. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden should be in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, which was why she needed a level 15 divine pill. My lord is too kind. However, if I reach level 15, I am willing to concoct alchemical pills for my lord unconditionally, Ling Han said. Oh. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden was surprised. Concocting alchemical pills unconditionally was not a small promise. The higher the level of an alchemist, the higher the price that had to be paid to ask him to concoct alchemical pills for them. Especially from level 9 onwards, the time required to concoct alchemical pills would become longer and longer, ranging from a few months to a few years. If it was a level 15 divine pill, concocting one time would require about 10 years. That would be equivalent to wasting 10 years of one's life. How much was the lifespan of a level 15 alchemist worth? Thus, if one wanted to ask a high-level alchemist to concoct alchemical pills for them, they would have to pay an extremely high price. But Ling Han actually said that he would concoct alchemical pills for her unconditionally. This was really too generous. Ling Han then said, "My lord, do you find this very strange?" Actually, the reason is very simple. I have a female confidant who is currently in my lord's Purple Moon army, and I only want to ask my lord to take care of her, which is why I am so generous. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden couldn't help but laugh loudly. Ling Han spoke the truth, and spoke of his own selfish intentions, which instead won her favor. She thought that this man was sincere and, more importantly, he was willing to sacrifice for his own woman. "Young man, come with me," she said. "Yes, my lord." The two of them left, and Xie Donglai also wanted to follow, but with a casual wave of the Purple Moon Divine Maiden's hand, Xiao, he was tossed to who knew where. "Young masters." The two old servants hurriedly chased after that little black. Their mission was to protect Xie Donglai. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden was very interested in Ling Han and asked about the matters between him and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. She also understood the grudge between him and Xie Donglai and couldn't help but say, "Just let your little lover temporarily stay in my army. Even if Xie Donglai comes, so what? I'm not afraid of him." These words were said very domineeringly and filled with lofty sentiments. "Many thanks, my lord," Ling Han said sincerely. Before leaving Cloud Apex Planet, it should be the safest for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden to stay in the Purple Moon Army. When he had dealt with the 5 sects, they would return to the Great Ling Empire together. Who cared if you were Xie Donglai or Xie Donglai? Take this token. You can enter the Purple Moon Army once every month and meet with your little lover. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden tossed an iron token to Ling Han. Ling Han was overjoyed. He could only see her once a month, but the camp of the Purple Moon Army never welcomed men. This was really breaking a precedent. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden waved a hand, and her figure shot through the air, instantly disappearing. Heavenly body tears could fly, and the speed of Eternal River tears was naturally even more astonishing. Ling Han put away the token and couldn't help but smile. If it was him who boldly entered the army camp, how shocked would the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden be? However, now that he had money, he naturally had to buy godly metal without restraint. On the other hand, he also had to go into seclusion to accumulate comprehension in order to break through to the medium extreme. He once again returned to the auction house and asked the other party to purchase godly metal above level 5 on his behalf. Ling Han himself was a level 8 alchemist, and added with the fact that the Purple Moon Divine Maiden seemed to be quite heavy, this naturally caused Jin Ming to value Ling Han even more. He gladly nodded in agreement, and did not even plan to take any fees from Ling Han. To be friends. That was what he said. There was naturally no harm in having one more friend. Ling Han naturally gladly accepted the other's kind intentions. He first went to see the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and then went into seclusion. Chapter 1273. 2 months passed in an instant. Ling Han completed the accumulation of his cultivation level. Comprehending under the reincarnation tree was extremely helpful. He could break through to the medium extreme now, but he didn't start immediately. Instead, he went to the auction house first. Jin Ming had purchased a large amount of godly metal for him, and after consuming all of it, Ling Han had also gone from a wealthy man to a slightly wealthy man. He had spent close to 400 million true origin stones, but he was only left with a little over 300,000. However, the amount of level 5 godly metal that he had purchased was more or less enough for the divine demon's sword to level up. He commanded the divine demon's sword to continuously swallow godly metal. After half a day, there was only less than 5 kilograms of level 5 godly metal left, and the divine demon's sword had also reached a state of satiation. It only had to eat another small piece of godly metal, and it would be able to complete the qualitative change from level 5 to level 6. Ling Han was in no hurry to take this step. Instead, he began to break through to the medium extreme himself. He wanted the divine demon's sword to undergo another qualitative change during the heavenly tribulation, and they would experience the heavenly tribulation together, thereby increasing the might of the divine demon's sword. As he comprehended under the reincarnation tree, time flew by like a dog. A month passed, and Ling Han had already comprehended Tao for 30 years. His figure flashed as he left the Black Tower. Hung, long, dark clouds immediately interweaved in the skies, forming rolling thunderclouds. What was strange was that this time, there was not only blazing white lightning in the thunderclouds, but also black lightning. This was the two-realm battlefield, which was both the God realm and the Netherworld realm. Thus, this heavenly tribulation had the characteristics of both realms. Ling Han had long since left Wolffang City. In any case, he was comprehending in the Black Tower, so he didn't have to worry about being disturbed at all. Moreover, after he had comprehended something, he could come out and directly face the heavenly tribulation. He didn't have to worry about bringing disaster to others. Amidst the rolling thunderclouds, terrifying lightning interweaved, turning into bolts of lightning that were thicker than mountains, fiercely striking down on him. Clang the heavens and earth were furious. Cultivation was to seize the good fortune of the heavens and was not tolerated by the heavens and earth. As such, a great calamity had to descend to return this power to the heavens and earth. Ling Han didn't care at all. His physique was much stronger than his cultivation level, so he would be fine no matter how the heavenly tribulation struck him. However, in order to temper his body, he still took the initiative to shatter his godly bones, advancing toward a higher level under the heavenly tribulation. The divine demon sword had also swallowed the last piece of godly metal, completing a qualitative leap. It was also being tempered by the heavenly tribulation. Traces of iron slag were discharged from the body of the sword, and the sword itself became even brighter. It was like a pool of autumn water, and it emitted a supreme divine might. This is an immortal sword. Ling Han, on the other hand, was comprehending the power of the heavenly tribulation. Now that its power had reached a whole new level, he could see more of the natural laws of heaven and earth, and the operation of freedom. Half a day later, the heavenly tribulation dissipated. Ling Han wanted more. He hadn't comprehended enough yet. It was fine. If he went to freeload on the heavenly tribulations in the future, they would all be at this level. Therefore, there was no need to be anxious. If one time was not enough, he would do it twice. If 2 times was not enough, he would do it thrice. There would come a time when he would reach perfection. The divine demon's sword trembled slightly, and it spun around Ling Han's body, exuding a frighteningly cold light. Ling Han possessed supreme defense and recovery ability, while the divine demon's sword had reached the pinnacle in terms of offense. If he used the divine demon's sword to attack him, would his defense be stronger, or would the divine demon's sword be sharper? Ling Han had a sudden thought. Then he felt that he was purely looking for abuse. What was there to think about? Good sword. A praise came from afar. It was a man in white, his face covered with a white cloth, and even his hair was wrapped in it. He didn't show his eyes, nostrils, or mouth at all, appearing incredibly strange. And his white clothes were also very loose, so it was impossible to determine whether he was a man or a woman from his figure. In fact, his voice was also very androgynous. It could be said that he was a man with some femininity, but could also be said to be a woman with a more heroic air. He stood on one leg, and there was a chain placed on his arched thigh. With a light pluck of his left hand, the sound of flowing water instantly sounded, like a spiritual spring flowing over a stream, very pleasing to the ear. This person was so strong, Ling Han thought. He couldn't tell this person's specific cultivation level, but he had a feeling that the other was very, very strong. The two-realm prodigy gathering was getting closer and closer, and prodigies from various places also appeared like bamboo shoots after the rain. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "It is indeed a good sword."
Can you part with it?
The white-robed man asked. "I'm sorry, it's not for sale." Ling Han shook his head. The white-robed man plucked the strings and wung, the sound of the chain tinkled. He paused and said, "Then let's make a bet. If I win, you will sell this sword to me." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Not interested." "Then how about a spar?" The white-robed man asked again. He didn't want to give up. Ling Han was also full of fighting spirit. He put away the divine demon sword and said, "All right." The white-robed man couldn't help but panic and asked, "Why did you put away your sword?" "I will naturally use it when I need to," Ling Han said with a smile. "Sir, how should I address you?" The white-robed man hesitated, and then said, "Faceless." Faceless. If covering one's face was called faceless, then should he be called bodiless? "I am Ling Han." Ling Han clenched his fists. His physical defense was invincible among those at the same cultivation level. Thus, he was also very fond of using his fists. The feeling of directly using his bare fists to beat his opponent down was very satisfying. "Take this." Faceless plucked the strings of the chain. Wung! A sound wave actually materialized, forming a sharp sword that slashed at Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't help but look shocked. This attack was incredibly sharp and actually made him feel an irresistible pressure. This wasn't because of his aura, but because this attack was indeed so terrifying. His opponent was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier.
No.
Ling Han hurriedly used the star-plucking step to dodge. Even the consummate level wasn't this powerful. It wasn't like he hadn't fought such an opponent before. Pinnacle level. That's right, his opponent should have cultivated to the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier. That was why he could possess such terrifying power. One had to realize that although Ling Han had advanced into the medium extreme, his actual battle prowess was only in the late stage of the high extreme. He hadn't even touched the line of the consummate level. But his opponent had cultivated to the pinnacle level. Whether it was cultivation level or battle prowess, how great was the gap between them? It was practically heaven and earth. "Oh, that's right. You're only in the early stage of the medium extreme." Faceless nodded, as if he had just realized this. "I'll suppress my cultivation level and battle you at the same cultivation level." True enough, his aura immediately dropped. However, it only dropped to the middle stage of the medium extreme because he could only seal a complete sun and moon. It was impossible for him to seal half a sun and moon, so he was either in the middle stage of the medium extreme or the peak stage of the low extreme. Although Faceless was a fair person, he wouldn't be fair if he was at a disadvantage. Thus, in the choice of approaching Ling Han's cultivation level, he naturally chose to be one sub-minor level stronger than Ling Han. There was no such thing as absolute fairness in this world, so this was already a very ideal result. Wung! Faceless plucked the strings of his chain again. Wung! Another sound wave materialized and slashed at Ling Han. This time, Ling Han didn't dodge. Instead, he clenched his fist to meet the attack. Pung! The sword formed by the sound wave was forcibly shattered by Ling Han. He roared and charged at Faceless. Chapter 1274. Faceless plucked the zither even more quickly. Wung, wung, wung. Sound waves shot out one after another, transforming into countless weapons that attacked Ling Han. The entire sky was filled with a dense black mass of weapons. The cold light interweaved, and it was eerie and terrifying. However, Ling Han was unafraid. He had advanced another minor level, and his physique had also leaped up to the level of level 7 godly metal or above. Even if he took the attack of a consummate-level cultivator head-on, he would only spit out a few mouthfuls of blood at most. Ling Han had suppressed his cultivation level and was only at the middle stage of the medium extreme. Even if he possessed battle prowess surpassing 6 stars, it would still be extremely difficult for him to wound his physique. Pung, pung, pung. He continued to attack, shattering all the sound waves that came at him with his fists. He was getting closer and closer to Faceless. Faceless seemed somewhat surprised. This was a battle between equals, yet his opponent was actually so powerful. However, facing such a powerful opponent also stimulated his fighting spirit. His hands danced rapidly and more sound waves shot out. This time they were not swords, sabers, axes, and spears. Instead, they condensed into a gigantic humanoid figure. It was a giant that was at least 30 meters tall. It was fully armored and held a huge axe in its hand. However, upon closer inspection, it was a corpse that had long since turned into a skeleton. Ghost flames burned in its eye sockets, emitting an eerie chill. As soon as the skeleton giant appeared, it immediately brandished its axe and charged towards Ling Han. It raised the axe high up in the air, and the battle armor on its body glowed with light, forming numerous divine runes that looked incomparably real. It was clearly just a sound wave, so why did it feel so real? Ling Han was fearless, and raised his fist to meet the skeleton giant's axe. Pung! His fist landed on the skeleton giant's axe, and instantly, a terrifying shockwave rippled out, crushing the ground in the surroundings and causing great destruction. However, this was originally a barren land, so it didn't matter how much damage was caused. Shockingly, this skeletal giant actually managed to block Ling Han's attack. This surprised Ling Han. How could it be so powerful even though it was just a sound wave? A king was a king after all. His methods were astonishing. Ling Han laughed heartily as he punched out repeatedly. Streaks of divine inscriptions appeared on his fists and arms, instantly raising his combat prowess to a whole new level. After a few more punches, the skeleton giant was smashed into pieces. However, Faceless only plucked the strings a few more times, and another skeleton giant was formed, charging toward him. There's no end to this. Ling Han shook his head. He couldn't just passively take a beating like this. He activated the star-plucking step, and his speed was as fast as the wind. He shook off the giant skeleton and headed straight for Faceless. Faceless let out a soft cry of surprise, as if he hadn't expected Ling Han's speed to be so fast. However, he was only slightly surprised. With a flip of his hand, he pulled out a thin sword from his zither and thrust it at Ling Han. He had hidden a sword in his zither, catching his opponent off guard. Ling Han already had no time to change his move, so he immediately gathered all his strength and blew out a breath of air.
Phew.
His figure instantly drifted backward like a falling leaf.
Schwa.
The sword sliced past, brushing past Ling Han's nose. If it had gone just a little bit further, Ling Han's nose would have been sliced off. Even if it hadn't been sliced off, blood would still have flowed out. Meanwhile, the skeleton giant had already charged over from behind Ling Han, and its axe slashed toward Ling Han's back. Faceless naturally wouldn't hold back, and he attacked from the front, giving Ling Han enough pressure. Pung, pung, pung. He and the skeleton giant launched a flurry of attacks at Ling Han. As expected, he was powerful. Ling Han sighed in his heart. This was the first time that he had been forced into such a sorry state in a battle between cultivators of the same cultivation level. However, even though they were battling at the same cultivation level, Faceless was actually a sub-minor realm higher than him. Moreover, Faceless was only suppressing his power. His control and utilization of the regulations of heaven and earth were still at the pinnacle level. Of course, there was a gap between them, and it was very large. However, how could there be a true fair battle in this world? If one's cultivation level was lower, what reason did Faceless have to give in to them? Being able to suppress one's cultivation level to battle was already very generous. Ling Han naturally wouldn't complain either. Since Faceless had used a weapon, he wouldn't hold back any longer. With a battle cry, he drew his divine demon sword. Murderous aura instantly soared into the sky. The divine demon sword had advanced by 1 level and had advanced into the level of a level 6 god tool. Its might had naturally risen to another level, and wisps of heaven's might circulated around it, causing one's heart to tremble with fear. He slashed with his sword.
Pooh.
The skeleton giant was instantly sliced in half. Sword might circulated, and the 2 halves of its body suddenly exploded. It was completely no match for a Faceless sword. What a good sword. Faceless didn't forget to praise as he slashed his sword over.
Ding.
The 2 swords clashed, and divine light dazzled. Faceless sword was indeed a level 8 god tool, yet it couldn't completely suppress the divine demon sword. However, this sword had also been nurtured by him, so it was of the same lineage as Faceless martial art. Added with the advantage of its cultivation level, its might wasn't inferior to the divine demon swords. It was just that it couldn't gain the upper hand. However, a level 6 god tool could rival a level 8 god tool. This was simply inconceivable. Boom, boom, boom. Faceless was definitely one of the most powerful young king tiers in the world. His battle prowess was incredibly terrifying. He had grasped a higher level of regulations of heaven and earth than Ling Han, and Ling Han's advantage lay in his freakishly powerful physique. His recovery ability was also freakishly powerful. Thus, one of them had more powerful attacks, while the other had more powerful defenses. Thus, they were locked in a stalemate. However, if this battle continued, it could be said that the final victor would definitely be Ling Han. This was because his defense was passive, and it would always be there. However, if Faceless was careless and allowed Ling Han to strike him, his injuries would be solid, and he wouldn't be weakened in the slightest. Ha ha ha. Faceless laughed, and took the initiative to stop the battle. He said, "In a battle of equals, I can't defeat you." "I can't defeat you, either," Ling Han said. "If we were truly at the same cultivation level, you might be able to defeat me. After all, I can only suppress my power, and my grasp of regulations is far superior to yours," Faceless said honestly. He appeared to be open and above board. However, he paused. That was just a sparring session. If it was a real-life and death battle, it's hard to say who would emerge victorious. Ling Han nodded. How could geniuses like them not have trump cards? For example, he had yet to unleash his heaven's might. Even if he were to be severely injured, he would still have the indestructible true fluid to help him recover. In fact, there was even a 1% chance that he would be able to rise from the ashes. Of course, the most awesome thing was still the Black Tower. At worst, I'd just hide inside, and even a saint wouldn't be able to do anything if he came. The 2 of them felt like old friends at first sight, so they simply sat down and discussed the Tao. Although Faceless Realm was higher, Ling Han's thoughts were bold and imaginative, which gave him a lot of inspiration. It was the same for Ling Han. The reason was way too simple. The other party's cultivation state was higher. The more the 2 of them talked, the more congenial they became. They talked for 3 days straight, but they were still not done. They felt that they could talk for another 7 or 8 days. "Hee, I've finally found you," a voice filled with hatred rang out. Xia Donglai suddenly appeared, followed by 2 old servants and a middle-aged woman. Zhu Liyun. Chapter 1276. Faceless stood tall like a mountain, his white robes fluttering in the breeze, exuding a strong sense of pretentiousness. But he has the strength. Only those with strength could be called acting cool. Those without strength were just fools. Xia Donglai's expression finally changed drastically. His opponent's aura instantly became unfathomable. It was as if he were a god that could not be touched.
How could this be?
He was clearly only in the medium extreme, so how had he suddenly become a great elite? How should I address you? Xie Donglai asked solemnly. He didn't dare to underestimate this person anymore. Faceless smiled faintly and said, "You don't deserve to know." Xie Donglai was instantly enraged. He wasn't qualified to know Ling Han's name. He was the descendant of great General Xie, and he had the backing of an Eternal River tier elite. Yet, he wasn't even qualified to know Ling Han's name. This guy is even crazier and more hateful than Ling Han. Kill, 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 he roared. He had been suppressing a belly full of anger in Wolffang City. Earlier, he hadn't even been able to enter the Purple Moon Barracks before he was chased out. Now, all of his anger had erupted. The two old servants also stood up. They put away the shock in their hearts and took out their weapons. Previously, they had only thought that Ling Han and Faceless were both at the medium extreme, so they would naturally disdain using god tools. However, now that Faceless had suddenly become a super elite, it was naturally impossible for them to remain so calm. "Brother Faceless, I'll leave it to you," said Ling Han with a smile. "All right," Faceless said indifferently, and he seemed to be very indifferent. This was indeed the case. He was in the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, and he could crush Xie Donglai and the others into dust with a single hand. Faceless Xie Donglai had naturally heard Ling Han call him that, but he didn't believe that there was really someone with that name. Thus, he had asked for Faceless' name, only to be slapped in the face. Damn it, damn it, damn it. The two old servants joined hands and charged at Faceless. They actually had a joint attack formation. Using the yin-yang steps, one on the left and one on the right, one on the top and one on the bottom, they stacked their attacks together. The power was truly not weak. Faceless plucked the strings of his zither.
Wang.
A sound wave shot out, transforming into a spear that swept toward the two old men.
Pung, the spear arrived.
The two old men were completely unable to resist it, and they were both sent flying with a single strike. This Xie Donglai's body trembled slightly. The combination technique of his two old servants was extremely powerful. When they joined forces, even he would have to expend a lot of effort to defeat them. However, the other party had only played the zither once, and the two powerful old servants had been defeated. "The pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier," he said in a trembling voice. Aside from this, he could not think of any other possibility. Faceless remained calm and said, "My mission is to make you stay obediently, so you'd better cooperate. Don't make me waste too much effort. I hate people who torment me. I always kill these kinds of people directly. Do you understand?" Xie Donglai's expression was incredibly ugly. He was the descendant of an Eternal River tier elite, yet he was actually being threatened like this. How could he accept this? However, the other party had already made it clear that if he continued to pester them, he would be killed. He didn't doubt Faceless' killing intent in the slightest. This kind of person seemed to be amiable and calm, but when it came to killing, he would definitely not hesitate in the slightest. The three of them did not dare to move. Moreover, they had the reputation of great General Xie, and they also had some life-saving techniques. If the other party truly wanted to silence them, they would have a chance to escape. Meanwhile, Xie Donglai's mind raced. He wanted to rope in this supreme prodigy. If he could subdue him and make him his subordinate, his status in the Xie clan would definitely rise to a higher level. This was not impossible, as Faceless still did not know his true identity. So, what if you're a prodigy? Can you cross the threshold of the Eternal River tier? Brother Faceless, I'm Xie. Pooh. Xie Donglai had just opened his mouth when a streak of sword qi slashed over and struck his mouth, directly knocking out all his teeth. Naturally, it also forced back the words that were about to come out of his mouth. "If you continue to spout nonsense, it won't just be your teeth," Faceless said coldly. Xie Donglai was both angry and embarrassed. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? However, he did not dare to speak at this moment. He only stared at Faceless, thinking that he would definitely take revenge for this. He definitely had to break through to the heavenly body tier as soon as possible and suppress others with his cultivation level. However, he really did not dare to speak anymore. Meanwhile, Ling Han was facing off against Zhu Liyun. "You want to kill me?" Zhu Liyun asked with a disdainful expression. She admitted that Ling Han was a prodigy of alchemy, but when it came to martial art, he was only at the low extreme. Medium extreme. Zhu Liyun was astonished. She remembered that when she had first met Ling Han, he had only been at the middle stage of the low extreme. However, after a short few months, he had already advanced to the medium extreme. This was far too terrifying. Were all alchemists this awesome? "I don't want to kill you," Ling Han said in a low voice. He hated immoral people like Faceless to the bone. "Humph. Even if you advance rapidly, there's still a gap of 2 minor levels between us. This is absolutely impossible," Zhu Liyun said with a cold chuckle. If it was Faceless who attacked her, she would definitely wet her pants in fear. However, if it was Ling Han, is that so? Ling Han drew out his divine demon sword. He wanted to kill this person in his strongest state. Zhu Liyun also drew out her god weapon. She would not relax and be careless just because her opponent's cultivation level was lower than hers. Arrogance was a bad habit of men. As long as she could achieve her goal, she would do anything. Moreover, this was a battle of life and death, so she naturally had to give it her all. As the saying went, even a lion had to use its full strength when hunting a rabbit. Ling Han did not waste any more words. He only had one word for this kind of evil woman: kill. He moved with his sword. The divine demon's sword radiated with endless divine light, and flashes of sword chi swept out like flying dragons in the sky. They were also like flashes of lightning and rumbles of thunder, displaying their extreme might. Xie Donglai couldn't help but reveal a covetous look in his eyes. This sword was so powerful that it even made him feel a sliver of threat. If he could take it for himself, perhaps it could increase his battle prowess by a few notches. However, a demon was standing right in front of him, so how would he dare to move? However, although the divine sword was powerful, Zhu Liyun was not weak either. The main thing was that she had a clear advantage in terms of cultivation level. This was not something that a god tool could make up for. She brandished a large saber, and her attacks were bold and unrestrained. Like a shrew cursing in the streets, her aura was also extremely ferocious. With this attack, Ling Han was instantly suppressed. No one found this strange. There was a whole 11 stars difference between their cultivation levels. Even if Ling Han was a 10-star genius, he would only be able to bear the grudge. In reality, it was impossible to become a 10-star genius without reaching the pinnacle level. If one reached the pinnacle level, they would be able to suppress consummate-level cultivators. Thus, this was a dead end. Ling Han did not have any intention of fighting a drawn-out battle. He wanted to use his powerful physique and recovery ability to exhaust his opponent to death. Instead, he directly drew out the misty soul-capturing flower. Zhu Liyun's eyes instantly became dazed when she saw this. Then they became fiery.
Pooh!
A sword light slashed past, and a head fell to the ground. Blood spurted into the sky. More refreshing reading on phones. Chapter 1277. Ling Han sheathed his sword.
Pum!
Zhu Liyun's headless body fell to the ground, and her head also fell from the sky. There was an intoxicated expression on her face, as if she didn't realize that death was coming. A look of shock immediately appeared on Xie Donglai's face. Just then, he had also almost been bewitched by the demonic flowers. Fortunately, he had been far away, and he had cultivated his divine sense before. Thus, he had a strong will, so it was impossible for him to be bewitched so easily. However, the two old servants were different. Even now, their consciousness was a little hazy, and it was as if they had forgotten who they were. What a terrifying demonic flower! Faceless was unmoved. He was only slightly curious, and asked, "Brother Ling, is this the misty soul-capturing flower?" "Brother Faceless, you have a good eye," Ling Han said with a smile. "This is the misty soul-capturing flower." He held the misty soul-capturing flower in his left hand, and the divine demon sword in his right hand. He strode towards Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai's expression changed drastically. He gritted his teeth, and a golden talisman appeared in his hand. He slapped it against his chest, and a powerful golden light instantly radiated. Ling Han and Faceless couldn't help but look away. It was too blinding, and it could even burn their eyes. When they walked over again, they saw that the golden light enveloped Xie Donglai and the two old servants, and they flew into the sky. In the immortal realm, only heavenly body tier elites could grasp the more profound regulations of heaven and earth. They could break free from their restraints and fly. In the two-realm battlefield, the regulations were extremely chaotic, so it was even more difficult to maintain flight. However, Xie Donglai and the others were extremely fast under the golden light. Clearly, that divine talisman couldn't be the work of a heavenly body tier elite. The Xie clan had an eternal river tier elite, so it was normal for them to refine some divine talismans for their descendants. However, the Xie clan had so many clansmen, and eternal river tier elites couldn't refine divine talismans all day long. This kind of divine talisman should be extremely valuable in the Xie clan. Even with Xie Donglai's status, he probably only had one. It was a true life-saving technique. He was afraid that Ling Han would use the misty soul-capturing flower against him, and he was even more afraid that Faceless would also make a move. That would be truly unsolvable. To cultivators at the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier was no less than beings at the heavenly body tier. Ling Han shook his head and put away the divine demon sword and the misty soul-capturing flower. In reality, the misty soul-capturing flower's usefulness was limited. At the very least, it had no effect on Faceless. Clearly, the stronger one's willpower was, the more they could resist the demonic flower's bewitchment. Faceless wasn't interested in gossiping, and he didn't ask about the enmity between Ling Han, Xie Donglai, and Zhu Liyun. Instead, he continued to discuss martial art with Ling Han. Another 7 days passed before he reluctantly bade farewell to Ling Han. This sparring session had been very beneficial to him and had given him a lot of inspiration. He had decided to go into seclusion for a few months or even a year or two in order to break through to the peak of the Lamita realm. Ling Han also entered the Black Tower. 3 months had already passed, and he was able to temper his body with the immortal flames again. As the saying went, once unfamiliar, twice familiar. However, Ling Han had experienced the tempering of his body with the immortal flames twice, leaving behind only incomparably painful memories. If it were possible, he really didn't want to be burned to ashes again. However, for the sake of becoming stronger, he still resolutely threw himself into the furnace. 3 days later, Ling Han came out of the cauldron. He had once again transformed into a tiny infant, but if one were to carefully compare, he was at most 3 months old the first time, but this time, he looked to be at least 7 months old. This represented his improvement in the indestructible heaven scroll, especially in the aspect of rising from the ashes. There's almost a 2% chance that I'll be able to instantly return to peak condition, Ling Han thought to himself. However, this still wasn't safe. After dying 50 times, he would only be able to come back to life once. This kind of chance was frighteningly low. However, I can eat berserk blood spirit pills again. Rising from the ashes would strengthen one's physique. This effect was slowly revealed, but the effects of the berserk blood spirit pill were too obvious. After a single pill entered his stomach, he would be able to advance by a sub-minor level. Under the reincarnation tree, Ling Han refined and comprehended the berserk blood spirit pill for 3 days. His cultivation level had already leaped into the middle stage of the medium extreme, but his comprehension of cultivation level was still slightly lacking. After all, it had only been 3 years. The higher one's cultivation level was, the more difficult it would be to comprehend the Tao of heaven and earth. He cultivated in seclusion for a few more days, completely stabilizing his cultivation level. Only then did he return to Wolf Fong City. Another few months passed, and he had to go to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. They had reunited after a long time, but the number of times they could meet was limited. Whether it was him or the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, they both greatly missed each other. He went to the Purple Moon Army and said some sweet nothings to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. However, when Ling Han wanted to be lovey-dovey with her, he was sent flying with a slap from the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Sure enough, this fierce woman hadn't changed at all. Ling Han gritted his teeth. This fierce woman was thin-skinned, and when his lips came close, she was so nervous that she involuntarily sent a slap flying. Because of this, he was unable to realize his desire to kiss her. This fierce woman, when I advance into the consummate level, how am I going to deal with you? Ling Han muttered as he left the army camp. However, his current strength was truly inferior to the heavenly phoenix divine maidens. Moreover, it was impossible for him to fight a battle of life and death and rely on his physique to exhaust her to death. Thus, he was completely helpless against the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Yo, isn't this little Han? Why does your complexion look as if you've eaten 100 flies? Rabbit and the old ginseng silently appeared and began to tease Ling Han. Ling Han's expression darkened and he threatened, "If you don't shut up, I'll turn you two into rabbit ginseng soup." Rabbit and the old ginseng laughed merrily and were naturally not afraid of Ling Han's threat. They put their arms around each other's shoulders, looking like the best of friends. However, Rabbit would occasionally drool at the old ginseng, so he knew that one of them could disappear at any moment. The old ginseng boasted shamelessly, "Little Han, do you want Grandpa Ginseng to teach you a few moves? I guarantee that you'll be able to soak her every time." Ling Han sneered. The old ginseng's methods were probably all swindling. "Oh, that's right. Grandpa Ginseng is about to break through to the Sun-Moon tier, so I've specially come to look for you to protect me." The old ginseng's expression became serious. Ling Han shook his head. He had thought that these two had come to look for him because they had found their conscience, but it turned out that they were about to undergo heavenly tribulation. Only then did they think of him. However, this was fine. He could freeload off a tribulation. "All right, let's go." The three of them went to a more desolate place, and the old ginseng began to undergo heavenly tribulation. He was very confident that he could survive the heavenly tribulation, but his vitality would definitely be greatly depleted after the tribulation. If he happened to be targeted by someone at this time, who wouldn't want to eat godly medicine? Though the two-realm battlefield had a rule that the weapons had to be aimed at outsiders, who would know if he secretly killed a few people outside of Wolffang City. Most importantly, the commotion caused by the heavenly tribulation was too great and would attract the attention of many people in the surroundings. Boom! The old ginseng released the suppression of his cultivation level. Instantly, thunderclouds surged and gathered from all directions. Meanwhile, the old ginseng was undergoing heavenly tribulation, and Ling Han took the initiative to enter the heavenly tribulation. He freeloaded off a tribulation to undergo heavenly tribulation and took the opportunity to analyze the might of heaven and earth. This brat is really a freak. Rabbit ran far away. He didn't want to be swept up by the heavenly tribulation at all. Only a freak like Ling Han would take the initiative to provoke a heavenly tribulation. Chapter 1278. Half a day later, the tribulation cloud dissipated. The old ginseng had successfully transcended the heavenly tribulation. Although his battle prowess wasn't very strong, the strongest aspect of the wood spirit was his life force. Thus, even though he had been riddled with wounds after transcending the heavenly tribulation, he had quickly recovered a portion of them. He was covered in wounds, yet his aura had become tens of thousands of times more powerful than before. The difference between the consummate level of the Mountain River tier and the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier was like the difference between heaven and earth. The old ginseng has advanced to the 5th level, so it's definitely more nutritious now. Rabbit was drooling, wishing it could gnaw on the old ginseng like it was a carrot. This was no ordinary godly medicine, but a ginseng king that had developed intelligence and absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to cultivate. It was many times more nourishing than ordinary level 5 godly medicine. Ha 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 ha, our luck is not bad. There's actually a ginseng king undergoing tribulation. Creatures of the five elements are favored by heaven and earth. The ginseng king is filled with life essence. Consuming one will not only increase one's cultivation, but even extend one's lifespan by tens of thousands of years. There was a long laugh, and 7 men appeared one after another. They were all at the sun-moon tier, but their specific cultivation levels varied, ranging from the low extreme to the consummate level. Thus, there was a large age gap between them. Some were middle-aged men full of heroic spirit, while others were white-haired old men. However, talent was also required to climb the path of martial art. Those who were old might not necessarily have a high realm, and those who were young might not necessarily have a low realm, or even a young age. Ling Han had also just completed his tribulation. He swept an eye over the 7 people, and a smile involuntarily tugged at the corners of his lips. Ever since he had encountered the people of Heaven's Sword Palace here by chance, he had received a hint from them, and he had also learned to see if others had any special emblems on them. The 7 of them were clearly a group, so the possibility of them belonging to the same faction was very high. With a glance, he immediately discovered that all 7 of them had a sword embroidered on their sleeves. Heaven's Sword Palace. In truth, this was also reasonable. After all, the Heaven's Sword Palace had lost a very important treasure map here, and they had already sent out a group of people to search for it. Since the whereabouts of this group of people were unknown, and their fates were unknown, the Heaven's Sword Palace would naturally send out even more people to search for it. The 7 people from Heaven's Sword Palace also looked at Ling Han's group of 3. They felt that their combination was too strange. Human, demonic beast, and wood spirit. That human? A middle-aged man looked at Ling Han with a puzzled look. To think that this young man would look somewhat familiar. Ancestral Master Lu, is there something wrong with this human? Someone beside him asked. Ling Han. The middle-aged man suddenly clapped his hands and called out, Ling Han. The other 6 people from the Heaven's Sword Palace were very confused. They seemed to have never heard of this name before. The main culprit who split open the skies of the vast lands. The middle-aged man said through gritted teeth, his eyes practically spitting flames. Forces of Sun-Moon tier were completely insignificant in the immortal realm. The 5 sects had only obtained this small world, the lower realm, by chance, and treated it as a precious treasure, managing it for millions of years. Moreover, their harvest was also very impressive. Every 10,000 years, they would obtain a few realm pills, which allowed many Sun-Moon tier elites to appear in the 5 sects. If one compared the 5 sects to other Sun-Moon tier forces, it would be clear. Whether it was the number or the ratio of Sun-Moon tier elites, the 5 sects were much higher. This was all the effect of the realm pill. However, as Ling Han split open the skies, the realm pill became like a fleeting cloud, only a memory. This naturally caused the higher-ups of the 5 sects to hate Ling Han to the bone, and viewed him as a target that had to be eliminated. The problem was, after splitting open the skies, who knew where the vast lands had taken Ling Han to? No matter how powerful the 5 sects were, they couldn't use it. Moreover, the concoction of the realm pill was too harmful. Only the true higher-ups and those who had been sent to the small world knew the secret. Thus, most people of the 5 sects completely didn't know who Ling Han was. However, after Ling Han split open the skies, the 5 sects listed Ling Han as their #1 enemy and ordered their disciples to search for Ling Han's whereabouts all over the immortal realm. They were quite determined to kill him no matter how far he was. Thus, when they heard that Ling Han was the person who split open the skies, the remaining 6 people all showed killing intent at the same time. Ancestor Lu, are you mistaken? A white-haired old man asked. Though he looked old, he was actually only in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, so his lifespan was short, so he naturally aged quickly. The others nodded. Ling Han had only split open the skies and come to the immortal realm for a few years, so how could he have broken through to the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier? This was too exaggerated. Could it be that he had eaten a super divine pill? That's right, it must be that brat, the middle-aged man said hatefully. He had seen the image of Ling Han's divine sense before, and what he wanted was that kind of aura. This was the aura of a cultivator, and it was extremely difficult to change. This person's surname was Liu, and his name was Lu Shi. He was an orphan taken in by the Heaven Sword Palace. Back then, he was ranked 10th, so he was called Lu Shi. 3 million years had passed, and he had also become a big shot of the Heaven Sword Palace from a small orphan.
That's just right.
We'll kill this brat today, and then take a ginseng king. The others all smirked coldly. Take your sister, the old ginseng immediately shouted. Want to eat your grandpa ginseng? You guys are still too early. 8 million years old, Lil Han beat him up for me. There's no need to be merciful, and if you beat him to death, Grandpa Ginseng will take responsibility for you. Though he said this, he was continuously retreating. With his small arms and legs, how could he dare to fight so many elites? Ling Han directly unsheathed his sword and said, "Since everyone knows my background, we can save a lot of nonsense. Let's fight." Mere ants. Lu Shi showed an expression of disdain. In the eyes of the elites of the immortal realm, the people of a small world were naturally ants. In fact, they couldn't even be considered ants. Otherwise, how could they have refined the people of the lower realm into realm pills without even blinking? And now, an ant actually dared to challenge him. He really didn't know what to do. This brat's cultivation level was indeed astonishingly fast, but he was only in the medium extreme, after all. Even if you were a 5-star genius, so what? In front of him, you still wouldn't be a match for him.
Kill him.
He was disdainful to personally attack, and ordered the other 6 people.
Yes.
The 6 people accepted the order, and all leaped out, closing in on Ling Han. Ling Han's hands were itching to fight. He had now advanced into the middle stage of the medium extreme, and his battle prowess had soared to the peak stage of the high extreme. Added with the divine demon sword in hand, his battle prowess was completely on par with elites in the early stage of the consummate level, and this did not take into account the suppression of heaven's might on his opponents, as well as a powerful killing tool like the Misty Soul Capturing Flower. If Lu Shi didn't attack, these 6 people were actually just a plate of appetizers in front of him. Ling Han charged out, waving the divine demon sword. Sword shadows intertwined, and killing intense sword. Lu Shi's expression instantly changed. The members of the Heaven Sword Palace were basically all sword cultivators, and he was also an elite of the sword. When he felt the might of the strike, he couldn't help but be stunned, and knew that he had severely underestimated Ling Han's strength. Retreat. He hurriedly called out, and his figure shot out. More refreshing reading on mobile. Chapter 1280. Lu Shi was protected by the pagoda, and Ling Han couldn't slash through it in a short while, so there was naturally no need to waste time. Do you have some strange god tools? Ling Han sized up the other person from Heaven's Sword Palace curiously. That person wet his pants in fright. At first, he thought that with Lu Shi making a move, he could easily take down Ling Han, but the result was far beyond his expectations. Lu Shi was actually forced by Ling Han to the point where he could only defend himself, and he was targeted by Ling Han. In this instant, he broke out in cold sweat like rain, and felt his legs go soft, as if he couldn't even stand steadily. Becoming one with the tool was a secret technique exclusive to the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and only those who had advanced into this tier would be taught by the sect. Thus, he couldn't take out a powerful god tool, and even if he could, his cultivation level was still a bit low, so what right did he have to stand against Ling Han? You dare! Lu Shi's voice traveled out from within the pagoda, and 2 divine swords flew out of his hands, slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han brandished his sword to parry, and shot out one flash of sword chi after another, dispersing all of Lu Shi's attacks. However, the other person from Heaven's Sword Palace also took the chance to flee. He really wet his pants in fright, and his legs flew wildly. He only hated that he didn't have a few more legs and that he couldn't flee fast enough. Can you escape? Ling Han shook his head and used the Annihilating Dragon's star arrow. Xiao, a sword swiftly streaked past like a stream of light, quickly catching up to that person. Pooh! An arrow pierced through that person's chest and blew him into two halves. However, the vitality of Sun Moon tier cultivators was too strong. Even if their bodies were split into two halves, they still didn't die. Their hands crawled, and their feet rubbed against each other. The two halves of their bodies were about to be pieced back together and reattached with origin power. After a few years of nurturing, who knew they might become a good man again? So troublesome. Ling Han drew his bow again. Don't even think about it. Lu Shi roared. He waved the pagoda and moved it to envelop Ling Han. Ling Han turned the arrow and shot it towards Lu Shi. Xiao, the arrow of origin power, was so fast that even Sun Moon tier elites would have a hard time tracking it. Puff! This arrow landed on Lu Shi's left shoulder. If he hadn't dodged in time, this arrow would definitely have pierced through his heart, and even if he didn't die, he would be severely wounded. Lu Shi turned pale with fright. How could this arrow be so fast and so powerful? Even his protective origin power was unable to block it. Although he still had many ultimate moves that he had yet to display, he had already lost all will to fight. This young man gave him an oppressive feeling that he could not resist. He had an ominous premonition in his heart that even the sect's strongest expert might not be able to take down this young man. But if one doesn't work, what about two or three? Even gods had a limit to their power. As long as they exceeded this limit, no matter how strong they were, they would not be able to escape death. He had already made up his mind to immediately report the matter of Ling Han's arrival on the Cloud Apex planet, and then mobilize the Heaven's Sword Palace. No, mobilize all the elites of the 5 sects to surround and kill Ling Han. Otherwise, with the freakish speed of this brat's advancement, he would probably be able to stand on equal footing with the 5 sects in a few years' time. Then he would never be able to suppress them. He was also a person who could let go of things. Immediately, he gritted his teeth and turned to leave. The treasure tower spun lightly, and streaks of flames descended from it, forming a powerful protective layer. Ancestor Lu. Ancestor Lu. The remaining member of the Heaven's Sword Palace called out in despair. He had barely pieced his body back together, but he would need at least 30 minutes to recuperate before he could use origin power to forcefully piece his broken body back together and recover his ability to move. But now, Lu Shi had abandoned him, which meant that he would definitely be alone and without help. Haha, who told you guys to want to eat Grandpa Ginseng? Eat Grandpa's treasured ginseng foot. The old ginseng began to jump again. The powerful enemy had fled, and the remaining one was only on the brink of death. He was naturally unafraid and rushed forward to kick him wildly. That pitiful person had originally been in the high extreme of the Sun Moon tier. In his peak condition, he could suppress the old ginseng with a single hand, but now he could only be kicked violently by the old ginseng. It was only a few kicks, and he spat out a lot of blood. He was stomped to death by the old ginseng. Fuck, Grandpa Ginseng is too awesome. I've only just advanced into the Sun Moon tier, and I've already killed a powerful enemy in the consummate level. The old ginseng felt extremely proud of himself. This must be celebrated with a 100-year-old doo-doo. True enough, he drew out a pink doo-doo and took a deep breath, his expression one of intoxication. The freak, Ling Han and Rabbit both kicked out at the same time and sent the old ginseng flying with a kick. However, Lu Shi had fled. Ling Han thought for a moment and gave up on the idea of chasing after him. The defenses of that treasured tower of the others was very astonishing. Even if he used the divine demon sword, he would need a very long time to slice through it, but the other would not sit still and allow him to break through his defenses. After all, this place was not far from Wolffang City. Fine. I'll lure the snake out and have them surround me. I'll take the opportunity to kill a few more, Ling Han said in his mind. It was uncertain who was the hunter and who was the prey. At this stage, my abilities will advance by leaps and bounds every 3 months. If I have another half a year, I will truly have the confidence to kill those at the peak stage of the consummate level with my sword. If he faced those at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier now, He could only rely on the misty soul-capturing flower to suppress them. However, as his cultivation level became higher and higher, he would be able to kill his enemies with his own abilities. This was also in line with Ling Han's Tao. What he pursued was personal strength. If I change to another place, who knows, I might be able to pick up a few realm spirit stones. I came here by opening the sky and have received the blessing of heaven and earth. My luck is much stronger than that of ordinary people. To Ling Han, the accumulation of origin power that he had obtained through cultivation could not possibly compare to that of the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. Thus, this was purely a waste of time. All he did was concoct alchemical pills and then wander around this vast two-realm battlefield. He would kill netherworld beings to accumulate merit points and at the same time see if he could pick up any realm spirit stones. His luck was really not bad. He actually managed to pick up a few realm spirit stones. However, they were only the size of a little finger, and their value could not even reach 1% of that of the Great Realm Spirit Stone. Even this luck has a time when it's used up. He sighed ruefully. Speaking of which, after Lu Shi returned to Wolfang City, he gathered the members of the Heaven Sword Palace to prevent them from encountering Ling Han and being killed one by one. At the same time, he contacted the Heaven Sword Palace and reported the matter of Ling Han. He emphasized repeatedly that they definitely could not underestimate Ling Han just because he had come from a small world and had only cultivated for a few decades. This enemy had to be dealt with his full strength. Otherwise, if he was allowed to grow, he would be the death of the Heaven Sword Palace. After receiving this report, a fierce debate took place within the Heaven Sword Palace. A portion of them agreed with Lu Shi's suggestion and wanted to join forces with the 5 sects to hunt down Ling Han. There was also a portion that thought that Lu Shi was exaggerating. It hadn't even been 10 years since Ling Han split open the skies, and the other party already had the strength to threaten the 5 sects. What a joke. 10 years, time was not even enough to cause an immortal-level cultivator's cultivation level to increase even the slightest bit, yet Ling Han had not only advanced from the Shattering Void tier to the immortal level, but also reached the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. In the end, it still alarmed an authoritative figure who had been in seclusion for a long time, and he decisively suppressed the dispute between the two sides. He ordered the Heaven Sword Palace to immediately summon the other 4 sects and send out all their elites to surround and kill Ling Han. Putting everything else aside, just based on Ling Han's sin of opening the sky, he was going to kill him. Chapter 1281. The higher-ups of the 5 sects sat together, discussing how to deal with Ling Han. 5 Sun-Moon tier forces, even the 5 great sects that could be ranked at the top of this echelon, actually joined forces to kill an ant in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier from a small world. This was unimaginable to them in the past. But now, they were all determined to kill him. That despicable brat was able to split open the sky, so he must have obtained a great opportunity. Otherwise, he couldn't have risen in a short 20 years. This has broken the rules of martial art. That's right. He can accommodate the power of the nation of the whole lower realm, which has a terrifying requirement for his physique. He must have obtained a precious treasure in the lower realm, which is why he advanced so quickly in the immortal realm. The lower realm is not simple. At least, the 12 generals under the Heavenly River King entered this small world and left behind a supreme inheritance. Unfortunately, the small world suppresses power, and we can't forcibly open the 12 palaces even if we enter. Maybe that brat obtained the inheritance of the Heavenly River King. Gasp. The members of the 5 sects could not remain calm. They actually didn't know who the Heavenly River King was, only knowing that he was an incredibly powerful being. Even the 12 generals were brave and invincible. If they could obtain the inheritance of the Heavenly River King, no, even if it was only the inheritance of the 12 generals, then they could at least match an Eternal River tier, right? Who would be willing to be under someone else? Especially cultivators, who were all proud and arrogant. We must capture that despicable brat. Since he came all the way to die, How can we not fulfill his wish? Send out all the elites. The 5 sects soon reached a consensus and sent out all the elites of their sections. Furthermore, to prevent any sect from monopolizing the treasures, every team to search for Ling Han was a mix of the 5 sections. Each sect sent out 2 people, and each team had 10 people. Of course, even the Sun-Moon tier elites of the 5 sects were limited. With so many people thrown into the vast 2-realm battlefield, it was not like a drop of water falling into the ocean, but in reality, it was not much different. Added with the fact that Ling Han would occasionally enter the Black Tower to concoct pills, the chances of finding Ling Han dropped drastically. Ling Han actually didn't plan on hiding. He very generously searched for enemies and realm spirit stones in the 2-realm battlefield, but he just couldn't find anyone from the 5 sects. What could he do? Another 3 months were about to pass. Ling Han was both looking forward to it and a little scared. Very soon, he would be able to consume the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill to increase his strength again. However, before that, he would first have to be burned by the immortal flames. Just thinking about this made the corners of his mouth twitch. Ding, ding, ding. The sounds of battle came from up ahead. Ling Han wasn't the type to meddle in other people's business, but this was the 2-realm battlefield. What if the living beings of the netherworld were fighting with the martial artists of the immortal realm? He immediately rushed over, but when he saw the 2 sides fighting, he couldn't help but shake his head. This was not a conflict between the God realm and the netherworld. Rather, it was a conflict between humans. Obviously, this was either a vendetta or a conflict of interests. When it came to benefits, it was even simpler. A realm spirit stone should have appeared here, and that was why the 2 sides had a conflict. However, the strength of both sides was very strong, and they were both at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. When Ling Han suddenly appeared, both sides paused slightly. However, when they discovered that Ling Han was alone and his cultivation level was only at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, they naturally didn't care and continued to battle. Stop, stop. However, after only a few moves, one side suddenly called for a halt. Humph, you guys were the ones who started the fight, so what do you want now? The other side asked. I'll let you have that realm spirit stone, the person who called for a halt said. This surprised the other side. To be honest, they were at a disadvantage, but if the other side wanted to kill all of them, they would have to pay a huge price. Thus, the other side had been wearing them down all this time, wearing them down until they lost their fighting spirit and voluntarily handed over the realm spirit stone in exchange for a chance to escape. However, they had never thought that the other side would actually call a halt at this time. They retreated but saw that the other side didn't move. When they carefully ran far enough, they hurriedly ran with all their strength and soon disappeared. A middle-aged man with a sword on his back said calmly, "Hee, I've searched far and wide for you, yet you've delivered yourself to me." A middle-aged man with a sword on his back said calmly, his eyes fixed on Ling Han, exuding a frightening coldness. The intelligence was right. Medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, a middle-aged woman continued. Brat, kneel down and accept your death, and I can give you a quick death. This was an old woman with a stooped figure, and she held a walking stick in her hand. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "What a coincidence. I was just about to look for you guys." He found the symbol of the Heaven Sword Palace on the sleeves of the 2 people, and the remaining 8 people all had the same symbol. It was very easy to deduce that they came from the Cloud Phoenix sect, the Absolute Saber sect, the Blue Thunder sect, and the Earth Dragon sect respectively. Humph, I've always wondered what this brat who opened the sky looked like. Did he eat the bile of a true dragon or the heart of a true phoenix to actually be so audacious? The old woman lifted the walking stick and then gave it a sudden knock. Ka, ka, ka. Instantly, a crack appeared on the ground, rapidly extending towards Ling Han. And at the same time that the ground split open, endless darkness actually appeared below, turning into multiple snake-like things. These were not snakes, but rather earth dragons, or in other words, earthworms. Disgusting. Ling Han humphed and brandished his sword in a slash. Tens of thousands of sword shadows streaked past, and these earth dragons were all cut into pieces, turning back into gray shadows. With this strike, the 10 people of the 5 sects all looked astonished. Although the old woman did not use her full power, Ling Han was still relaxed, showing off his strength. This young man could not be underestimated. Hee, everyone help me hold the line, and don't let this junior escape. Wait for me to capture him. The man with a sword on his back took a step forward. He drew his sword, and suddenly, sword intent burst forth, its sharpness tearing the air apart. This was an elite of the Heaven's Sword Palace. Sword cultivators indeed had astonishing destructive power. Among the 5 sects, whether it was the Earth Dragon sect, the Cloud Phoenix sect, or the Blue Thunder sect, they were actually not pure humans, but half-humans, which was the offspring of the union between a divine beast and a human. They were stronger than ordinary immortals, especially when their bloodline showed signs of atavism. Their strength was not just a little bit stronger. For example, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had only entered the immortal realm for 10,000 years, and she had already reached the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Unfortunately, limited by the level of the 5 sects, they could not obtain any further cultivation techniques and could only step at the consummate level. If there was no special opportunity, they could only stay at this level for the rest of their lives. However, the Heaven's Sword Palace could be on equal footing with these 3 sects, and from one aspect, this proved that the strength of sword cultivators could make up for the lack of bloodline. Moreover, this elite had reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and merely pointed the tip of his sword at Ling Han, and he already felt as if his skin was about to be torn apart. His sword intent was really terrifying. Too powerful. More refreshing. Chapter 1282. Cultivation level didn't equate to battle prowess. Ling Han believed that this man who pointed a sword at him was at least a 3-star genius, or even a 4-star genius. At present, he definitely couldn't match such an elite. In reality, his battle prowess was only at the peak of the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Taking into account Heaven's might weakening the opponent by a sub-minor level, he could match an opponent in the early stage of the consummate level. Of course, if the Misty Soul Capturing Flower could be effective, that would be another matter. But in a head-on confrontation, Ling Han had no doubt that he would be sliced in 2 by the other's sword. Never doubt the destructive power of a sword cultivator. Ling Han's current physique was only slightly above level 7 godly metal and hadn't reached level 8 yet. And even if it reached level 8, if the other's battle prowess could really jump 3 to 4 stars, then it could still cause considerable damage to level 8 godly metal. Ling Han directly unleashed the Misty Soul Capturing Flower. Instantly, the spirits of the 10 people present were seized, but it was only an instant, and the eyes of the 4 elites of Heaven's Sword Palace and Absolute Saber sect became clear. Having formed Sword Heart and Saber Heart, reaching the level of illumination, their spirits were sturdy, and it was too difficult to shake them. This was also why sword cultivators and saber cultivators were difficult to deal with. They only lived for killing, and their 7 emotions had long been severed, so it was extremely difficult to shake their divine sense. Of course, this was also because these 4 people's cultivation level was high enough. Otherwise, the Misty Soul Capturing Flower would still have a miraculous effect.
Die.
A sword slashed over, and the 4 suns and moons simultaneously released brilliant light, rippling with terrifying power. Seeing that the Misty Soul Capturing Flower was ineffective, Ling Han knew that things were bad. He hurriedly put away the demonic flower and used the star-plucking step, beginning to break out of the encirclement. Where do you think you're going? The remaining 3 people of Heaven's Sword Palace and Absolute Saber sect also raised their swords and slashed over at the same time, and the remaining 6 people also regained clarity after the Misty Soul Capturing Flower was put away. Their expressions all changed, and they all launched attacks. This brat actually had such a mystical item on him. If it weren't for the fact that he had 4 companions who had formed Sword Heart and Saber Heart, they probably would have fallen for it and might even die here. Once they thought that they might die in the hands of a junior carelessly, their humiliation turned into anger, and they wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han into 1,000 pieces. Ling Han did not prolong the fight and used all his strength to break through. "Do you think you can escape?" The 10 great elites all humphed coldly. Even the weakest among them was at the early stage of the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. If the 10 of them joined forces, they would be able to kill any cultivator at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. What more cultivator at the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier? Hong, all kinds of attacks interweaved, incomparably brilliant. Pung, pung, pung. Ling Han was struck again and again, but after suffering a few heavy blows, he finally tore through the encirclement and successfully escaped. There were several bloody holes on his body, but he didn't seem to care. He said, "I'll remember this debt for now. I'll make you pay for it one by one." The 10 people from the 5 sects were all dumbstruck. He didn't even fucking die? If it were them, any one of them would have definitely died. However, a cultivator at the medium extreme had actually survived, and was even threatening them coldly. This caused a chill to rise up in their hearts. This kid can't be allowed to live. You can only die here today. What future will there be? The 10 of them moved together, determined to kill Ling Han. This was not only to eliminate a powerful enemy in the future, but also to uncover the great secret on Ling Han. They definitely did not believe that a lowly commoner from a small world could rely on his own strength to reach this step. There had to be an astonishing opportunity hidden on him, and perhaps it was the inheritance of the Heavenly River King. Ling Han humphed and used the star-plucking step, sprinting at full speed. The 10 people from the 5 sects hurriedly gave chase, but they discovered that they actually could not catch up to Ling Han. Not only did they not catch up, but the distance between them was continuously widening. Such a fast movement technique definitely can't last long. Chase. We must eliminate this disaster. If this brat is not eliminated, we will not be able to eat or sleep in peace. But Ling Han soon disappeared without a trace. The 10 people were helpless and could only split up to search for him. After Ling Han escaped, he had already hidden inside the Black Tower. He did not enter the Black Tower immediately. Firstly, he did not want to expose the secret of the Black Tower, and secondly, he did not want to rely too much on the Black Tower and hide inside the moment there was danger. He channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, and the wounds on his body immediately healed at a visible speed. In fact, his wounds were very serious. Those were 10 elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and some of them had not only reached the peak stage of the consummate level, but were even 3-star or 4-star geniuses. This strike had torn his flesh and blood, and even his godly bones had almost been broken. He touched his neck. That elite from the Heaven's Sword Palace had almost beheaded him with a single strike. However, with the indestructible true fluid, the wound had already healed, but it still made Ling Han's heart palpitate. If it were not for the fact that his godly bones were hard enough, his head would definitely have been separated by now. He was in the Black Tower, but his vision was not affected, and he discovered that there was currently someone chasing in this direction. It was that old woman from the Earth Dragon sect. Although she was leaning on a walking stick, her speed was extraordinarily fast, as if she could shrink the ground to inches. A single step was more than 300 meters. He was alone. Ling Han smirked coldly. It just so happened that he had suffered such a huge loss and was just about to vent his anger. The old woman suddenly stopped. She had the bloodline of the Earth Dragon and was very sensitive to odors. She could faintly smell Ling Han's aura, but it suddenly disappeared when she reached here. Strange. Could it be that he had escaped into the ground? She released a long howl, wanting to call the others over. However, it was at this moment that a sword light suddenly flashed, carrying with it a boundless killing intent, slashing toward her neck.
What?
The old woman was incredibly shocked. There was clearly no one here, so where had this sword light come from? She barely managed to raise her walking stick to meet the sword light, and when she turned around, she saw that this sword was held in the hands of a young man. It was Ling Han. She was both shocked and furious. She had not thought that not only did Ling Han not flee, but He actually dared to ambush her here. However, his concealment method was too good, and even she had not discovered him. At this moment, she was also completely focused on sensing Ling Han's aura that had disappeared, so it could be said that her mental defenses were at their weakest. This sword strike was like an avalanche, and it was also like the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting. It was indescribably terrifying. Her walking stick still managed to block the sword, but because she had moved hastily, she did not have enough power and was instantly sent flying by the sword. However, she had also bought some time, and her figure hurriedly retreated. Ling Han closed in. Because the two of them were too close, there was no space for him to swing his sword, so he simply let the divine demon's sword leave his hand and let it attack on its own. Meanwhile, he swung his fists repeatedly at the old woman. The old woman was in a rush to save her life, and as she protected herself with her hands, she hurriedly retreated. She did not have the time to think about how Ling Han, who had been heavily injured just then, had instantly become unscathed. At this moment, there was an endless howl, and the other 9 people were quickly rushing over. The old woman was overjoyed. She only needed to hold on for a little longer, and when the reinforcements arrived, the situation would change, and it would be Ling Han's turn to desperately escape. You have no chance. Ling Han smirked coldly, and the misty soul-capturing flower suddenly appeared. The old woman was shocked, and hurriedly wanted to close her eyes, but this demonic flower affected divine sense, so it did not matter whether she closed her eyes or not. In the instant that she closed her eyes, she saw that there were 9 figures hurriedly rushing over from all directions. But this was also the last time she would see them in her life. Ling Han's punch caused the old woman's head to explode, and even her divine sense was destroyed along with it. He cast a cold glance at the 9 members of the 5 sects and unhesitatingly started to sprint. In an instant, he had infinitely widened the distance between him and the 9 of them. Chapter 1284. Ling Han's eyes swept over it and immediately revealed a sliver of killing intent. This was a being of the netherworld. However, he didn't make a move. This little beast had just advanced into the immortal level and was extremely weak. Moreover, it didn't seem to have developed intelligence. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come over when there were clearly 2 Sun-Moon tier elites. This little beast looked like a cat and had snow white fur all over its body. It was soft, shiny, and exuded a silver luster. Its appearance was the type that people couldn't help but like at first sight. No wonder even someone as cold and aloof as the heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. "Jiao, Jiao." The little beast called out at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, drooling even more happily. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden said to Ling Han, "Give it a portion too. Didn't you realize that it's a being of the netherworld?" Ling Han asked. "But it's so cute." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden couldn't resist at all. The little beast made a low cry and was very cute. Ling Han sighed and could only draw out another bowl and pour a portion for the little beast. Then he placed it in front of him and said, "Little guy, eat and run. A glutton like you should stay obediently in the netherworld. Didn't you come to the immortal realm to fill someone's stomach?" The little beast immediately rolled up its tongue and began to drink the soup. Perhaps it was too delicious, but its head moved forward more and more. As a result, it lost its center of gravity, and its 2 hind legs were raised. Ling Han was shocked. It had to act cute even while eating. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden probably couldn't stand it anymore. He turned around, and as expected, the love in the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's eyes was already overflowing. The little beast drank the soup very quickly. Being able to cultivate to the mountain river tier, how could it not have intelligence? It immediately chirped at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, as if it knew that begging her was the most effective. Sure enough, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden turned her eyes to Ling Han, her eyes full of pleading. Ling Han sighed and had no choice but to bring out another bowl. One bowl after another, this little beast's appetite was a little shocking. Ling Han couldn't help but be moved. One had to know that the ingredients he used were in consideration of his and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's cultivation level. If it was given to a mountain river tier, it could eat, but definitely wouldn't eat much. If the little critter ate so fiercely, it would directly explode and die. But in reality, this little beast was still alive and kicking. It was acting cute and acting spoiled. There were no signs of it bursting. Strange, after finishing half of the meat soup by itself, this little beast was finally satisfied. It ran to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's feet and began to wag its tail happily, continuing to act cute to the end. Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was extremely compassionate. She picked up the little beast, combed its fur, and even gave it a massage, which angered Ling Han. He had never seen this fierce woman treat him so gently before. As if sensing Ling Han's hostile gaze, the little beast curled up its little paw and retreated into the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's bosom. "Don't scare it," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden warned Ling Han. "You eat my food, drink my water, and now you want to steal my wife?" Ling Han glared at the little beast, and the little beast was not to be outdone. It glared back at Ling Han while rubbing its little head against the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. It obviously knew which one it should curry favor with. "A little monster of the netherworld. I'll eat it sooner or later," Ling Han said fiercely. Jojo. The little beast acted spoiled, looking as if it had been badly frightened. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden once again gave Ling Han a stern warning, causing Ling Han to sigh ruefully. He definitely had to quickly increase his cultivation level, or even his wife would have to do the dirty work for him. Crack. Right at this moment, a light cracking sound rang out. Ling Han couldn't help but turn his gaze towards the egg that he had kept for who knew how long. Now, whenever he had time, he would take it out to bask in the sun, and that sound just now had come from the eggshell. There was a crack, crack, another sound rang out, and the first crack appeared. Ling Han was overjoyed. Was this guy finally going to hatch? This was the descendant of the Azure Flame Eagle. In truth, it wasn't of much help to Ling Han anymore, but after raising it by his side for so many days, he was still very much looking forward to a new life breaking out of its shell. Crack, crack, crack. The Azure Flame Eagle inside continued to peck, and the eggshell cracked bit by bit. Finally, the head of a little bird poked out. This time, it didn't peck anymore. Instead, it opened its beak and began to gnaw on the eggshell. Very soon, it had gnawed out a large circle. This eggshell seemed to be very delicious because the little bird had already gnawed out a gap that could allow it to escape, but it had no intention of stopping at all. It was still gnawing continuously, causing even Ling Han to feel a slight urge to break off a piece and have a taste. As a glutton, he felt a great deal of pressure. Ling Han, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and the little beast were all silent. Only when the little bird had gnawed on the eggshell until there wasn't a single bit left did the little guy struggle to stand on its tiptoes and look around blankly. It first tilted its head and stared at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden for a while, then stared at the little beast, and finally at Ling Han. Then, paw, 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 it ran over with its two little feet and leaned against his leg, squatting down to rest. Did it think he was a bird's mother? Hey, putting aside the fact that he's a man, how does he look like a bird? Fuck, what's with your eyes? Meanwhile, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was rocking back and forth in laughter. This would be the best material to make fun of Ling Han in the future, and it could be said that it would last a lifetime. Ling Han shook his head and sent the little bird into the Black Tower. He sharply discovered that this Azure Flame Eagle's future would far surpass that of its mother. It was said that the Azure Flame Eagle had a sliver of the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Azure Luan. If it could awaken, this little bird would be very useful. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Amidst a cry of surprise, a few people walked over, and all looked at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, their faces filled with fanatical worship. These were the disciples of the five sects. In the five sects, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was definitely a legendary figure. It had only been 10,000 years since she arrived in the immortal realm, and she had already reached the consummate level of the sun-moon tier. Who knew how many people worshipped her as their idol? However, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had gone into seclusion a long time ago and had only left behind a stunning legend. Thus, seeing the heavenly phoenix divine maiden here naturally made those people excited. Ling Han. But when they saw the other person beside their idol, their expressions all changed drastically. This was a demon. In a short few months, there had already been a considerable number of elites of the five sects who had died at the hands of Ling Han, and this person was even more so the sinner who had opened the sky. According to the five sects, the lower realm was a small world that they had managed for a few million years and had produced an astonishing amount of wealth. Now, because of Ling Han, it had disappeared forever. Thus, regardless of whether they knew the truth or not, the disciples of the five sects all hated Ling Han to the core. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, this person is Ling Han. It's dangerous. Hurry up and leave him. Someone called out to the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, afraid that she still did not know Ling Han's true identity and would be injured by Ling Han. Yet the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said calmly, I have already severed all ties with the Cloud Phoenix sect. The various matters of the five sects have nothing to do with me anymore. She had long since repaid the kindness of the Cloud Phoenix sect for teaching her, and when the sect sold her to Xia Donglai, the little bit of relationship she had with the Cloud Phoenix sect had also vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, those disciples of the five sects were both shocked and furious. Just what kind of bewitching potion had Ling Han fed the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden that she would actually renounce even her own sect? Chapter 1285. Lady Heavenly Phoenix Maiden, don't be bewitched by this demon, the disciples shouted as they sent out signals to inform the others to come over. The average strength of the five sects disciples was very strong. People like them had only cultivated for a few 100,000 years, yet they had all advanced into the sun-moon tier. This wasn't because they had awakened their bloodlines, but rather because they had ingested realm pills. Of course, these realm pills weren't complete, but rather diluted. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to divide them. Even so, it still caused the overall strength of the five sects to increase tremendously. They were practically no weaker than ordinary heavenly body tier forces. If they hadn't reached the sun-moon tier, they wouldn't have dared to come to the two-realm battlefield to surround and kill Ling Han. Mountain River tier was practically a death sentence. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden held Little Beast in her arms and said, That's all I have to say. If you speak any more nonsense, I definitely won't be merciful. There was a sinister look in her eyes. Since her relationship with the five sects had already been severed, anyone who made a move against Ling Han would be making a move against her. Heavenly Phoenix Maiden, didn't you claim to be the widow of the Ling clan? Didn't you say that you only live for one person? A long laugh traveled over from afar. In the blink of an eye, a young man flew over at an incredible speed. He carried an ancient sword on his back, giving off an otherworldly aura. Ling Han's eyes narrowed as he glanced over. Sword Emperor 10,000 years ago, there were a total of 7 heaven-tier elites in the lower realm, and they were known as the rulers of the present age, and the Sword Emperor was ranked first, suppressing the Setting Sun Saber Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. When they met again 10,000 years later, the Sword Emperor had already advanced into the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Although it wasn't as astonishing as the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maidens, it was still very, very exaggerated. While the Realm Pill was indeed impressive, the most important thing was still his natural talent. Otherwise, why would people who had cultivated for tens or hundreds of thousands of years more than him still be at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier? The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's expression didn't change as she looked at this old rival of hers, and she said, What do I need you to meddle in? As they spoke, a few more people rushed over. They were much stronger this time, and there was no lack of elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier. Hee hee, the Sword Emperor shook his head in disdain. You boast that you are as pure as ice and as clean as jade, but in the end, you still fell in love with another man. Ling Han naturally did not want his wife to be humiliated, even if it was a misunderstanding. He said, "Sword the Arch, it has been 10,000 years since we last met. Do you dare to fight?" Sword Emperor. Many people were confused. Who was this demon talking to? However, the Sword Emperor's heart skipped a beat. This title was something he had obtained in the small world, but the moment he entered the immortal realm, he very consciously took off this title and temporarily sealed it up, returning to his original name. Otherwise, if he were to call himself the Sword Emperor in the divine world, wouldn't he be attracting hatred? How did this kid know? Hold on, this brat is also called Ling Han, and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden didn't hesitate to turn against the sect for his sake. Could it be? He had a shocking guess in his heart, but there was still one doubt. If Ling Han was that person, how did he survive for 10,000 years? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he found the answer himself. Time source fluid. Since the elites of the 5 sects in the lower realm all relied on this to accumulate generation after generation, why couldn't Ling Han do the same? A very long time ago, the 5 sects had been attacked by Ma Duo Bao. At that time, their foundation had almost been destroyed and all the time source fluid had been taken away. If Ling Han had obtained time source fluid through this channel, that would be a very reasonable explanation. "You're Ling Han?" The Sword the Arch stared at Ling Han. Ling Han knew what he meant and said, in order to beg me to refine pills, I even secretly learned 3 of your sword techniques.
I'm really sorry."
With this, the Sword the Arch had no doubt that this Ling Han was not only a sinner who had come from opening the sky, but also the Alchemy Emperor from 10,000 years ago. No wonder his cultivation speed was so fast. With top-grade alchemical pills to take every day, how could it not be fast? "I didn't expect you to be someone who died long ago." A sinister expression appeared on the Sword Thearcha's face. "If I had known that you would be such a great threat to the sect, I really should have killed you back then." 10,000 years ago, although Ling Han had been similar to him in terms of cultivation level, his battle prowess had been a joke. "Zhang Heng, are you seeking death?" The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden flew into a rage, and her killing intent was even greater than the Sword Thearcha's. The Sword Thearcha's original name was Zhang Heng, and after coming to the immortal realm, he had been called Zhang Heng instead of the Sword the Arch. "Wife, let me fight." Ling Han pressed down on the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He had long since wanted to battle the Sword the Arch and the Setting Sun Saber Emperor again. Right now, their cultivation level was still above his, so he wouldn't be bullying them. This caused his fighting spirit to soar. "Be careful, he's a 4-star genius," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said in a low voice. The reason why she had stepped forward was because she didn't want Ling Han to fight the Sword the Arch. Ling Han's battle prowess was at the early stage of the consummate level at most, and he could rival those in the middle stage of the consummate level. Meanwhile, the Sword the Arch was in the late stage of the high extreme, and he was also a 4-star genius, so his battle prowess was roughly at the late stage of the consummate level. This meant that Ling Han would definitely be defeated. Ling Han nodded and said, "Don't worry, I can't defeat you at the moment. As for this guy, it'll be a piece of cake." The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden rolled her eyes. This guy was really petty. Hadn't she only suppressed him a few times in the past? Was there a need to take it so seriously? "Sword the Arch, come, let's battle." Ling Han challenged the Sword the Arch to a battle. A nostalgic expression appeared on the Sword Thearcha's face, and he said, "It's been a long time since I've been called the Sword the Arch." However, one day, I'll make this title shine again. What great ambition! In the immortal realm, the titles of King, Emperor, and Emperor couldn't be used carelessly. This was because there were royal dynasties, majestic empires, and imperial empires. If you used these titles carelessly, it would be taboo. For example, if Zhang Heng called himself the Sword the Arch, that would be equivalent to placing himself in the position of Eternal River Tier. What would Heavenly Body Tier elites think of this? A measly sun-moon tear wanted to ride on their heads? That was purely seeking death. Now, Zhang Heng said that he would make the title of Sword Dart shine again one day. This meant that he was confident that he could advance to the eternal river tier. Just this ambition alone was worthy of admiration. Ling Han nodded. This was the sword Dart he knew. He said, "On account of our past friendship, if you lose, I hope that you can leave the Heaven's Sword Palace and pursue your own Dao." Haha, we'll talk about that after you defeat me. Zhang Heng unsheathed his sword.
Wang.
A terrifying murderous aura instantly soared into the sky. His battle intent and sword intent fused together, transforming into a divine sword. It was as if it could even slice open the heavens. Ling Han sighed in his mind. In terms of sword Dao alone, Zhang Heng's attainments were indeed superior to his. This was because Zhang Heng was single-minded. Meanwhile, Ling Han cultivated too many things. Alchemy took up a large portion of his cultivation, and there were many other miscellaneous things as well. However, it was precisely because of these miscellaneous things that he had become who he was now. Ling Han didn't draw his divine demon sword. Instead, he clenched his hands into fists. Divine patterns appeared on his fists, causing them to expand endlessly. They were like mountains. I screwed up. He took the initiative to attack. Chapter 1286. Ling Han's fists danced in the air, and they were like two mountains smashing toward Zhang Heng. The fist hadn't even smashed down, but a terrifying aura overflowed, causing the sky to collapse and the nebula to lose color. The disciples of the five sects hurriedly fled in a sorry state. Even those in the low extreme of the sun-moon tier, and even those in the medium extreme and high extreme, didn't dare to face this kind of iron fist head-on. They would be severely wounded if they were even grazed by it. Ling Han's physique was comparable to level 7 godly metal. In fact, it could even be slightly stronger. This kind of battle technique made full use of this unique trait of his and developed his own advantages. Iron fist strikes, however. Zhang Heng was not the slightest bit alarmed. With a sweep of his sword, he slashed toward the sky. Shwa! A streak of sword chi pierced through the air and slashed onto the two mountains. With a wung, Ling Han's fists were actually repelled. Strong in terms of strength, it was clear that Zhang Heng had the upper hand. His cultivation level was much higher than Ling Han's, and he was also a 4-star genius. Hence, Ling Han's 6-star strength was suppressed by 4 stars. Just 2 stars was not enough to make up for the difference in cultivation level. 10,000 years ago, you weren't even a match for me. Now, you still won't be a match for me, Zhang Heng said proudly as he charged forward with his sword. He did not walk the path of becoming one with his god tool. Firstly, he had not reached consummate level yet, and secondly, he was ambitious. He was not content with the sun-moon tier and wanted to become a supreme elite of the eternal river tier. Thus, he was naturally unwilling to fuse his sun and moon into his god tool and sever his own path of cultivation. Ling Han laughed heartily and said, "I thought you were going to say that I'm no match for you now. If that's all you've got, then I'll cut off your head within 10 moves." Zhang Heng brandished his sword, and as he swung it, it seemed as if the power of heaven and earth had started to circulate in response to it as it pressed down on Ling Han. Ling Han nodded silently. In terms of sword Dao, Zhang Heng was indeed qualified to be called a sword emperor. He was very powerful. Only he's not weak. Ling Han's fists turned into fingers. Xiao, xiao, xiao. He kept flicking his fingers, which transformed into sharp sword chi that shot toward Zhang Heng. Thunderbolt sword art. Right now, even though the lightning sword technique had not reached great mastery, it should not be a problem to call it minor mastery. It possessed the speed of breaking rules, the strength of the great Tao, and a trace of the might of the heavenly tribulation. Even if he didn't slash out with the divine demon sword, it was still as if a true dragon had appeared, and it was filled with a domineering aura that could crush the world. Zhang Heng couldn't help but be moved. He was a sword cultivator, and his entire life had been devoted to the sword. He was infatuated with the way of the sword, and although Ling Han had merely flicked his fingers as a sword, he could still sense a boundless sword intent. This sword intent was far above his comprehension. He was astonished. It should be known that though he had lost the title of Sword Emperor, he was still incredibly proud in his heart. He believed that what he lacked was merely cultivation level. In a battle of equals, he was confident that he could kill any Heavenly Body tier or Eternal River tier elite with his sword. But this kind of complacency crumbled in front of Ling Han's sword intent. The person who could not be considered a match for him in the past had actually surpassed him in the way of the sword. He refused to accept this. Zhang Heng roared as he unleashed his sword Dao to its fullest. Sword Qi flew through the air, transforming into countless black blades that slashed toward Ling Han. They were as dense as dark clouds. Ling Han was unafraid, and he faced his opponent head-on. The members of the 5 sects were all stunned. Most of them had never seen Ling Han before, and they had only heard of his fearsome reputation. At this moment, they couldn't help but feel astonished. This person was actually able to exchange blows with Zhang Heng. This was truly astonishing. Although Zhang Heng was only at the high extreme, his battle prowess had soared to the consummate level. Many veteran elites were no match for him, and he was known as the strongest rising star of the Heaven's Sword Palace. In fact, he was on par with the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden. However, Ling Han's strength was only at this level. What made the sect so cautious that they had even mobilized all of their elites just to kill him? Zhang Heng clearly had the upper hand. If they continued to battle like this, the one who would lose would definitely be Ling Han. Zhang Heng alone was more than enough to deal with him, so why was there a need to make such a fuss? However, Zhang Heng knew that he had indeed gained the upper hand. However, that was because he had suppressed Ling Han with a higher cultivation level and greater power. In terms of the profundity of sword techniques alone, he had already lost. How can there be such a sword technique that combines speed and power so perfectly? His heart itched. As a sword maniac, he was willing to pay any price just to learn the secrets behind this sword technique. Enough. Since this brat's only at this level, let's attack together and capture him. An elder stood by the side. He had observed for a long time, and after discovering that Ling Han's strength was only at this level, he relaxed. They weren't here to fight Ling Han alone. Rather, they were here to destroy this demon that could shake the foundation of the 5 sects in the future. The consummate level elites all strode forward. They knew that there was still a massive secret hidden on Ling Han. This secret could allow the 5 sects to soar into the sky, allowing them to advance into the Heavenly Body tier, or even the Eternal River tier in the future. Back down, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shouted.
Boom.
2 silhouettes of phoenix wings that were about 500 meters long unfurled behind her. However, these wings were burning with true flames, and they complemented her exquisite beauty, making her appear like a beautiful goddess of war. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, are you really going to betray us? A few elders rebuked harshly. They were so furious that they almost spat blood. In their minds, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's current achievements were naturally due to the efforts of the sect. However, not only did she not repay the sect, but she was even protecting the greatest enemy of the 5 sects. This was practically despicable to the extreme. If you take another step forward, you will become my enemy, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden said menacingly. She hadn't received any benefits from the Cloud Phoenix sect. For example, she completely rejected the Realm Pill. Being able to reach the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier in such a short period of time was completely because of the awakening of her bloodline. The elders exchanged a look and all nodded. They definitely couldn't let Ling Han off. What if this brat disappeared without a trace from now on and reappeared after tens of thousands of years? What would they do then? With this brat's freakish talent, he only needed to reach the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier by then, and it would be enough to wipe out the 5 sects. Old Yu, Old Qian, The two of you hold back the heavenly phoenix, divine maiden. The rest of you, attack with me and capture that brat.
All right.
The elders divided the tasks and began to carry them out. The heavenly phoenix, divine maiden, was furious. She flapped her phoenix wings, and divine flames danced, exuding a boundless might. Her cultivation level was only at the consummate level, but because of her bloodline, her flames possessed a sliver of the might of a true phoenix, so they were naturally incredibly terrifying. This was a suppression in terms of cultivation level, causing the elders to groan at the same time, expressions of discomfort appearing on their faces. They were also very speechless. Against a being with such a high-grade bloodline, they were already weakened by 30% before the battle had even begun. The heavenly phoenix, divine maiden, took the initiative to attack. As she delivered a palm strike, there was a cry of a phoenix, and a colorful phoenix flew out. It flapped its wings, and its whole body was wrapped in divine flames as it charged toward the members of the five sects. Die! The members of the five sects shouted sternly. Since the heavenly phoenix, divine maiden, refused to repent, they would kill her as well. Chapter 1288. An army of 1 million had appeared, all of them at the Sun-Moon tier, led by heavenly body tier elites. This kind of lineup was too terrifying, and it was enough to sweep through an entire region. What was more frightening was that even heavenly body tier elites had been mobilized, so would Eternal River tier elites be far behind? Was a great calamity about to befall them? Ling Han grimaced. Was he a jinx? Wherever he went, trouble would follow. Humph. Someone in the Netherworld army discovered Ling Han, and over 100 people immediately flew over, all of them waving their weapons and exuding a monstrous, evil aura. Ling Han made a prompt decision. Run. He didn't take these 100 people seriously, but there were heavenly body tier elites in the enemy's camp, which was definitely not someone he could match. He didn't want to show off his bravery. Rabbit and the old ginseng were both intelligent beings, and they didn't need Ling Han's reminder to run. Fuck. You guys are really loyal. Ling Han hurriedly used the star-plucking step. You're powerful, so who'll stay behind if you don't? The old ginseng said. That's right, Rabbit agreed. Don't run. The Netherworld people chased aggressively, but they were getting further and further away. The difference in speed was too great. Ling Han and the others ran far away, and just when they thought they had escaped from the threat of the Netherworld, they heard a soft humph, and a person silently appeared in front of them. He was dressed in white, and he was handsome and handsome. If it weren't for his overwhelming evil aura, he wouldn't be any different from the beings of the immortal realm. However, such a powerful evil aura meant that his cultivation level was also frighteningly high. Heavenly body tier. Ling Han's heart shuddered. He stretched out his hands, grabbing onto Rabbit and grabbing onto the old ginseng. He could hide into the Black Tower at any moment. After being targeted by such an elite, he no longer cared whether or not he would expose the secrets of the Black Tower. Don't be nervous. I just want to ask you something, the white-robed man said with a smile. His teeth were snow-white, and he was very charming. Ling Han also smiled and said, Then what do we do after we ask? Naturally kill them. The stakes are too high, so we can't leave them alive, the white-robed man said calmly. Damn, Ling Han laughed heartily and said, All right then, I'll listen to it. Young man, you're very bold. The white-robed man stared at Ling Han a few times and couldn't help revealing a surprised expression. What kind of cultivation technique do you cultivate? It can actually make your body return to its youthful state. The eyesight of a heavenly body tier elite was naturally able to see through Ling Han's disguise with a single glance, unlike the heavenly phoenix maiden, who only felt that there was something off about Ling Han, but didn't know exactly why. Ling Han said solemnly, What I cultivate is the first heaven mysterious art that transcends the heavens and dives into the earth, unparalleled in the world. The white-clothed man laughed heartily and said, Youngsters are truly like newborn calves that are not afraid of tigers. You even dare to tease me. Fine. I'll just extract your soul and all your secrets will be clear at a glance. He stretched out his hand, turning it into a stretch of the sky, pressing down on Ling Han. The palm force hadn't even arrived, but the terrifying aura had already suppressed Ling Han to the point where he couldn't move in the slightest. This was the power of the heavenly body tier. No matter how talented one was, one couldn't resist it. Unfortunately, he had only suppressed Ling Han with his aura and didn't use his martial art intent to trap Ling Han. There was a flash and Ling Han, Rabbit, and the old ginseng all disappeared.
Huh.
A look of surprise appeared on the white-clothed man's face. What was going on? Why had 3 living beings disappeared at the same time? If they had been teleportation talismans, he should have been able to sense the ripples of space being torn apart. Spatial God tool. His eyes swept over the area. No matter how small a spatial God tool was, there should still be traces of it. However, no matter how he searched, he couldn't find anything strange on this piece of land. I don't believe it. He grabbed all the land within a radius of 50 kilometers and then used his great power to refine it into nothingness. Then, after a great wave of washing away the sand, what was left would be the spatial God tool. Heavenly body tier elites were too powerful, and the soil here was made of ordinary soil and rock, so how could it possibly withstand his refinement? It was easily turned into ashes, and he only needed 3 days to refine such a mountain-like piece of land. However, when this entire piece of land disappeared, the white-clothed man finally looked astonished. He couldn't find a spatial God tool. How was this possible? Could it be that they didn't hide in a spatial God tool? But it's even more impossible for it to be a teleportation talisman, he muttered to himself, unwilling to give up as he searched the surroundings. However, he still couldn't find anything. If it were any other time, he wouldn't mind searching here for 3 to 5 years. In any case, the lifespan of heavenly body tier elites was incredibly long. However, this time, he had a mission on his shoulders. Let's deal with the proper business first. He made his decision. With a single step, he was already more than 100 kilometers away. Ling Han and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. If this guy had decided to stay here, then they wouldn't have bothered to show their heads at all. Strange. Why would the Netherworld suddenly launch a large-scale invasion? Ling Han was filled with confusion. Although this was the 2-realm battlefield, and battle was the main theme, killing and being killed were the eternal themes. However, they had mobilized 1 million Sun-Moon tier elites, and there were even heavenly body tier elites joining in. This was no longer a small skirmish, but rather a major battle. It's fine if they're only at the heavenly body tier. If even Eternal River tier elites appear, then even heavenly body tier elites can only be regarded as cannon fodder. Ling Han thought of the Heavenly Phoenix, Divine Maiden. She was currently in the Purple Moon Army, and once war broke out, soldiers had to be on the battlefield. Regardless of whether one retired or not, under such circumstances, they had to fight. No, I have to hurry back immediately. Ling Han made his decision. He exited the Black Tower and set out toward Wolf-Fong City. The 3 armies were all stationed outside Wolf-Fong City, and they surrounded and protected this iron front. Once they fell, the Netherworld army would be able to march straight in and invade the entire Cloud Apex planet. He flew and soon arrived at the camp of the Purple Moon Army. However, when he arrived, he discovered that the entire camp was actually empty. It was clear that the entire Purple Moon Army had been mobilized to resist the Netherworld invasion. The severity of the situation seems to be even worse than I had anticipated, Ling Han said in a low voice. Come. The Netherworld had even mobilized Eternal River tier elites. Otherwise, the entire Purple Moon Army wouldn't have been mobilized. I'll go to Wolf-Fong City to scout out the situation first. He turned toward Wolf-Fong City, and upon entering the city, he encountered an incredibly strict inspection. The city was also filled with a somber air, and the streets were no longer as lively as they had been in the past. Everyone was hurrying along, and there was worry on their faces. Ling Han called out to a mountain river tier passerby and tossed him a true origin stone. Then he asked, "What's happened recently? Why are you so nervous?" The passerby caught the true origin stone and hurriedly put it away. He respectfully said, "My lord, you should have just returned from outside, right? It's incredible. The Netherworld has launched a large-scale invasion, and they're led by 3 Eternal River tier elites. In a single day, they've advanced several thousand miles, and they're about to reach Wolffang City." 3 Eternal River tier elites?
Gasp.
No wonder the entire Purple Moon army had mobilized. It was most likely the same for the other 2 armies. Otherwise, how could they resist an army of 1 million led by 3 Eternal River tier elites? Was an all-out war about to erupt? Chapter 1289. The Netherworld was invading on a large scale. Wolffang City had already sent out a notice that everyone had to report to the 3 armies within 3 days of receiving the news and accept orders to resist the Netherworld together. This time, there was no need to talk about retirement or meritorious service. As long as the elites of the Immortal Realm remained on this battlefield, they had a duty to resist the Netherworld. Furthermore, an emergency notice had already been sent out, and it wouldn't be long before more elites arrived. The Netherworld had suddenly increased the scale of the battle to this level, and they had to mobilize all the elites of the Cloud Apex planet to resist. Ling Han immediately headed to the front lines. Everyone had a duty to resist the Netherworld's invasion. This was a collision between 2 worlds, and if the Cloud Apex planet was really occupied by the Netherworld, it would definitely be a massacre. The Netherworld wouldn't refine the Cloud Apex planet into a realm pill, but the difference wouldn't be too great. Countless lives would die. Ling Han arrived at the front lines and saw that there were currently 2 armies facing off. One side was naturally the Immortal Realm, formed by the Purple Moon Army, the Wind Army, and the Arhud Army. There was also a large number of scattered soldiers, forming an army of about 700,000, but the quality of the soldiers was uneven. There were Mountain River tier and Sun Moon tier, but Mountain River tier cultivators occupied half of the army, causing the quality of the entire army to decline greatly. It was far from comparable to the other side. This army of the Netherworld reached 1 million, and they were all at the Sun Moon tier. With this comparison, it was clear what kind of terrifying force the Netherworld had mobilized this time, and they had an overwhelming advantage. At this moment, Ling Han couldn't care about his personal feelings. He didn't immediately seek out the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, but entered the army camp to register. He didn't try to be special, and he was willing to listen to orders and be a qualified soldier. The Netherworld launched a few attacks, but they all controlled the scale of the battle. Only a few Heavenly Body tier elites participated in the battle, and the others were all at the Sun Moon tier.
Was this a test? No one was concerned about this.
Everyone was hoping that reinforcements would quickly arrive. It would be very difficult for them to stop this army of the Netherworld alone. And the smarter ones were even more confused. Why would the Netherworld suddenly launch such a large attack? One had to know that when the elites of the Netherworld entered the Immortal Realm, they couldn't use the regulations of the Immortal Realm at all. Their battle prowess would drop to 3 or 4 stars. In an evenly matched battle, this was completely seeking death. Furthermore, the God Realm isn't necessarily weaker than the Netherworld. Is it really a good idea for you to invade it on such a large scale? Perhaps we have an earth-shattering treasure here. Even the Almighty of the Netherworld was tempted by it. Thus, they started a war to occupy this place. Being able to tempt even a great elite of the Eternal River tier, this treasure trove must have been left behind by an elite at the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, or even the inheritance of a saint. It has to be like this. This kind of speculation was very popular, and it quickly spread throughout the military camp. It also made many people think of searching for this treasure. If it was really left behind by a saint, then it was not impossible to reach the heavens in a single step. The battle had not even started, but many people were already having crooked thoughts. The 3 commander-in-chief had no choice but to behead a few of the most rebellious people in order to maintain military discipline. This was the bad thing when there were too many scattered soldiers. They didn't have a sense of teamwork, and it was easy for them to reveal their selfish side. After that, the Netherworld army launched a few more attacks. However, it could only be said that it was all bark and no bite. It was always controlled, to a certain scale. And as time passed, the reinforcements of the two imperial empires also arrived in an endless stream. As more and more elites arrived, the invasion of the Netherworld seemed to be coming to a halt. This also made the majority of people believe that the Netherworld was not invading for the land of the Cloud Apex planet, but for the inheritance of a high-level eternal river tier, or even a saint. Ling Han, the new commander, wants to see you. A soldier ran over and passed on an order to Ling Han. All the scattered soldiers had not been organized into the regular army. They had not gone through any training, so no matter how strong their individual strength was, it was completely impossible for them to be integrated into the battle of the group. If they were forcibly added into the group to make up the numbers, it would only cause the opposite effect. Thus, all the scattered soldiers had been organized into an independent army. If a mutiny occurred, it would only affect this army, and could not possibly affect the battle prowess of the regular army. The new commander, Ling Han, felt slightly strange. Did he know this person? Why did he suddenly want to see him? Then he would go and see him. He followed the soldier and arrived in front of a tent. The soldier stopped and respectfully said, "My lord, I have brought Ling Han." This tent was very large, showing that the owner's status was extraordinary. "Let him in," a voice said from inside. This voice is a bit familiar. Ling Han thought. The soldier beside him had already opened the tent door, and a person instantly appeared inside. Xia Donglai, no wonder this voice was so familiar. No wonder he wanted to see him. As it turned out, he had come to take revenge. "Ha ha ha ha, Ling Han, you didn't think that we would meet again so soon, did you?" Xia Donglai said with a cold smile, a mocking expression on his face. At first, he had wanted to go into seclusion to break through to the heavenly body tier. After breaking through, he would find Ling Han and kill Faceless along with him to redeem the face he had lost. However, he had never thought that the Netherworld would suddenly launch a large-scale invasion. Even Great General Xia had been mobilized, and because he was the heir of the Xia clan, he had obtained the position of commander. More coincidentally, Ling Han just so happened to be under his command. This naturally made him overjoyed, and he immediately called Ling Han over. He wanted to show off his authority as a superior. "Why is it you again, idiot?" Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle. "Haven't you suffered enough?" Xia Donglai couldn't help but feel annoyed. However, he was confident in his victory and said, "In this place, I'm the general and you're the soldier. Whatever I say, you have to do." "Oh, then what orders does the commander have?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Go and bring some firewood over," Xia Donglai said with a humph. Xia Donglai humphed. Right now, he was only ordering Ling Han around. Yet once the battle with the Netherworld began, he would send Ling Han to the most dangerous place and borrow the hands of the Netherworld to eliminate Ling Han. Sure. Ling Han nodded and turned to leave. Xia Donglai smirked coldly, thinking that this person's courage was only SOSO. He immediately backed down. He waited. When Ling Han returned with firewood, he would continue to order him to do other things. If he disobeyed, he would punish him according to military discipline. Who asked him to be an official? However, as he waited, his expression became darker and darker. This was because Ling Han didn't return. This brat actually dared to disobey orders. He flew into a rage and immediately walked toward Ling Han's tent. "Ling Han," he shouted loudly. His voice was like thunder, showing the intense anger in his heart. This shout startled the surrounding people, and many people came out to watch. "Why is it you again, idiot?" Ling Han walked out of the tent. "You dare to disobey orders? I'm going to punish you," Xia Donglai said coldly. Ling Han had voluntarily given him something to use against him. Chapter 1290. "If I may ask, what order am I taking?" Ling Han asked with a smile, completely unconcerned. Xie Donglai was speechless. In front of so many people, did he have the nerve to ask Ling Han to chop wood? Wouldn't that be laughable? Asking a Sun Moon tier elite to chop wood? What kind of joke was that? He could torment Ling Han in private, but he couldn't do it in public. It didn't take a discerning person to figure out that he was deliberately making things difficult for Ling Han. This was an unspoken rule. I'm the boss, and you're the subordinate. If I make things difficult for you, you have to do it. Otherwise, I'll keep making things difficult for you until you give in. But if you give in, there'll be a second, a third, until there's no more room for retreat. Thus, if you really encountered this kind of person who was deliberately making things difficult for you, you either had to accept your fate and compromise to the end, or you wouldn't give in and fight to the end. Ling Han naturally wouldn't compromise and chose to face it head-on. Xie Donglai's face was livid. Being contradicted by his subordinate in front of so many people made him very, very displeased. Ling Han, you're disrespecting your superior, he said harshly. Oh, I'm disrespecting my superior just by asking you. How impressive of you. Ling Han laughed and said, the Netherworld army is 50 kilometers away. Captain, please go and show your might and scare them all away. Fuck, not to mention him. Even if Xie Qian went personally, the Netherworld army wouldn't retreat. Xie Donglai stared at Ling Han, feeling extremely uncomfortable in his heart. His cultivation level was superior, his battle prowess was superior, and his background was superior. In fact, he was even superior to Ling Han in terms of status, so why couldn't he deal with this person? He said menacingly, since you're my subordinate, then I'll give you some pointers so that you won't be killed on the battlefield. Captain is really caring and considerate, Ling Han said mockingly. Don't be so glib. As your superior, I have a duty to guide you in your cultivation. Xie Donglai felt like he had finally grasped the crux of the matter. Since he was stronger, then he should use his strength to crush Ling Han. It's fine if you don't want to be instructed. Go and chop 10,000 loads of firewood within a day. He was afraid that Ling Han would refuse him, so he added a time limit. Ling Han sneered and said, what does young Master Xie need so much firewood for? Do you want a barbecue? Then you should have brought a few more servants from your home. What a joke, acting all high and mighty, like a young master in a military camp. You prick, you actually dare to challenge me, your superior? Come, let me see if you have the right to do so. Xie Donglai attacked. Wang. He stretched out his hand, flipped it over, and pressed it down. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure enveloped Ling Han, trying to crush him and even force him to his knees. There was a gap of 2 small realms between the two of them, and the difference in their strength was incomparably huge. Ling Han stood proudly. Under the shroud of power, his entire body glowed, and divine patterns appeared one after another. Upon closer inspection, there were actually 9 divine dragons, and each divine dragon had a different appearance. 9 dragons, tyrant body artists, the saying went. The 9 sons of the dragon were all different. The 9 divine dragons were not in the form of true dragons yet. Some were missing horns, and some were missing claws. As Ling Han's body arts improved, they were continuously perfected. When the 9 divine dragons all turned into the form of true dragons, it meant that Ling Han's 9 dragons tyrant body art had reached the peak, and he had advanced into the level of a saint. What? There are actually 9 different true dragons? Whatever technique, as long as it's related to true dragons, it must be extremely powerful. No wonder he dared to oppose Xie Donglai. He really has some skills. However, the difference in cultivation level is too great. He's destined to be suppressed. Speaking of which, this Xie Donglai is really petty. He's still taking revenge at a time like this. The crowd whispered among themselves. Some sympathized with Ling Han, while others despised Xie Donglai for being petty. However, no one came out to dissuade him. They were all scattered soldiers, and usually did not have the slightest bit of friendship. Why should they take the risk of offending Xie Donglai to stand up for Ling Han? Many people became excited and started to watch the show. The 9 dragons unleashed their might, swallowing and spitting out clouds and exuding divine might. Ling Han stood proudly, like a mountain. He had not only cultivated the 9 dragons' tyrant body art, but the toughness of his godly bones was close to that of level 8 godly metal. It was really a joke to think that he could be suppressed by the pressure of the consummate level. Xia Donglai, what are you doing flipping your hands around? Could it be that you really want a barbecue? Ling Han asked with a smile. Damn it! Xia Donglai cursed. A mighty elite at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier actually couldn't suppress a mere cultivator at the medium extreme. Moreover, there were so many spectators. How could he keep his face? He knew that Ling Han was strange. He had killed Zhu Liyun, but that was with Faceless protecting him, and he had also relied on the might of the Misty Soul capturing flower. As for Ling Han's own battle prowess, he was extremely disdainful. That was because he was a 4-star genius, so even if they were all 4-star geniuses, they would cancel each other out. He still had the overwhelming advantage of being 2 minor levels above Ling Han. In his mind, he would be able to suppress Ling Han with a flip of his hand. Not only would he be able to give Ling Han a slap to the face to vent his personal hatred, but he would also be able to intimidate these scattered soldiers so that they wouldn't dare to disobey him. Who would have thought that Ling Han would be so difficult to deal with? Instead, he felt a little embarrassed. All of a sudden, boos rang out from the crowd. Shut up! Xia Donglai roared in anger. He charged toward Ling Han, his hands transforming into claws that slashed down at Ling Han.
Boom.
He had clearly used a secret technique. His claws actually transformed into pitch-black demonic claws that were as large as a house. The claws reflected an icy luster, as if they were made of metal.
Gasp.
Could this be the black gold demonic eagle's claws? According to the legends, demonic beasts like the black gold demonic eagle are incredibly terrifying. They can tear godly metal of the same level with a single claw. If this claw lands, that guy will be in deep trouble. There were so many people present, so there were bound to be some who knew their stuff. They immediately pointed out the secret technique that Xia Donglai had used.
Boom.
The 2 demonic claws descended, and it was as if the space itself had shattered. Abnormal black vortexes appeared. Ling Han didn't plan to take this attack head-on. His figure flashed, and he instantly disappeared into the crowd. Xia Donglai pushed his demonic claws in pursuit.
Pung.
There was a heavy sound, and many people were instantly sent flying. Some were vomiting blood, and some were cursing. The scene had become extremely chaotic. We have no enmity with you, yet you actually attacked so viciously. Xia Donglai, could it be that you are a spy from the Netherworld? Ling Han, however, acted as if nothing had happened. With so many people sharing the burden for him, with his strength and physique, he naturally could easily neutralize the residual power. Xia Donglai was furious. You fucking dare to slander me? He couldn't be bothered to speak anymore and pushed his demonic claws to continue chasing after Ling Han. A spy from the Netherworld is killing people. Ling Han shouted as he broke into a run and ran into the crowd. Pung, pung, pung. The people along the way all expressed that they couldn't dodge in time and were sent flying by Xia Donglai's attacks. Right now, anyone could clearly see that Xia Donglai was attacking the people in the campsite like a madman. Chapter 1292. Xia Donglai kept a close eye on Ling Han. He wanted to personally witness Ling Han's death before he could escape. They were both at the Sun Moon tier, so he was definitely more resilient than Ling Han. Moreover, he purposely didn't use his full strength because he didn't want to be surrounded and attacked by too many people from the Netherworld so that he could calmly watch Ling Han die. Ling Han had naturally also discovered Xia Donglai's gaze. It was filled with resentment and hatred, and it was as if there was a blade on his back. How could he not sense it? He shook his head inwardly. This person's desire for vengeance had truly reached the pinnacle. He actually did not hesitate to sacrifice 10,000 men just to kill him. On second thought, these 10,000 soldiers didn't belong to the Xia family. If they all died, then so be it. Damn! A cold glint flashed across Ling Han's eyes. He suddenly turned around and charged towards Xie Donglai, shouting, "Brother Xie, let's kill the enemy together." He unsheathed his divine demon sword, and a murderous aura instantly soared into the sky. It was as if an emperor had descended. The netherworld elites in the vicinity were all sent flying. Some had their heads severed, some had their arms severed, and some had their legs severed. As long as their battle prowess hadn't reached the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, they would definitely be unable to escape this calamity. Ling Han charged right up to Xie Donglai. His eyes narrowed, and he instantly unleashed a divine sense attack. 7 kill subduing soul. Oh. Xie Dongshi's movements instantly froze. This was an attack on his spirit, and he could not help but be affected. But as the descendant of great General Xie and a top-notch genius himself, how could he possibly not have cultivated a technique to train his spirit? His soul was very strong, so under the 7 kills subduing soul art, he only paused for a moment before returning to normal. However, it should be known that amidst the chaos, the swords and sabers were also very messy. In that short instant, Xie Donglai had already been struck several times. Fortunately, his protective origin power had not dissipated, so his injuries were not serious. "Damn it," he said angrily. He was supposed to be the one who tricked Ling Han, but why was he the one being tricked instead? If not for the fact that his strength was strong enough and his divine soul was very stable, then that strike just now would not just be a mere slash.
Die.
He could no longer suppress the murderous intent in his heart. He turned the muzzle of his gun towards Ling Han. A golden broadsword flashed, swirling with a black aura. It was full of corrosiveness, and even the air seemed to be melting. The surrounding people of the underworld were all confused. Why were their own people fighting each other? But they didn't care. They could just kill them all. Bang 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 bang. Ling Han and Xie Donglai were trapped in a tight encirclement. Not only did they have to guard against each other, but they also had to defend against the attacks from the Netherworld army. Moreover, this was not just 1 or 2 attacks. As the number of people left in their lone army dwindled, the pressure on them also increased. Theoretically speaking, Ling Han should have died long ago. He was merely in the medium extreme of the Sun Moon tier, so there was no way that he could last longer than someone at the peak stage of the consummate level. However, in reality, Ling Han was still alive and kicking the entire time, and it looked like he wouldn't give up until he killed Xie Donglai. Xie Donglai couldn't imagine why this guy was still alive. "You're the one who's going to die," Ling Han said coldly. "For the sake of your personal grudge, you actually sacrificed the entire army." "You're so heartless and crazy. So, what right do you have to be human? Heh, an entire army is going to die with you, and you're still not willing to rest in peace." Xie Donglai brandished his saber in a swift slash. Golden light danced in the air, but the black corrosive aura was full of darkness, forming a strong contrast. "You're really hopeless." Ling Han didn't say anything else. Xie Donglai's way of thinking was already rotten to the core. He was completely hopeless, and there was no point in saving him.
Kill.
He unsheathed the divine demon sword and used the lightning sword technique. The surrounding netherworld elites were all sent flying by his slashes. They were no match for him at all. If heavenly body tier elites didn't appear, then even the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier would have to be wary of Ling Han, who wielded the divine demon sword. Of course, if they could surpass 3 or 4 stars of battle prowess on the basis of consummate level, they could still crush Ling Han. For example, Xie Donglai struck with his saber, and Ling Han didn't dare to take it head-on. Instead, he used the star-plucking step to dodge. In any case, there were many netherworld warriors here, so he could just let them block him. The two of them battled in the netherworld camp for a long time, and this gradually attracted the attention of netherworld elites. A divine sense swept over, and both Ling Han and Xie Donglai felt a chill all over their bodies. "You're merely at the Sun Moon tier, and you actually dare to fight your way here?" A large hand descended from the sky and slapped toward Ling Han and Xie Donglai, who were fighting. Countless stars floated above the large hand, and it was as if the entire sky was pressing down. Heavenly Body Tier Elites. Xiaodonglai's expression changed drastically. He could no longer care about watching Ling Han die with his own eyes. At this moment, escaping was more important. He hurriedly retrieved a divine seal and slapped it onto his body. Suddenly, golden light flowed and wrapped around him. After returning to the Xie clan, he asked for another life-saving seal. Xiao, he immediately transformed into a streak of golden light and charged toward the heavens. You still want to leave? Ling Han had long since expected this. Using his body as a bow, he activated the ultimate arrow. Xiao, an arrow shot out and chased after Xiaodonglai. The techniques of the Eternal River tier were too astonishing. Even a divine seal that they had casually created possessed great might. If it was only the annihilating dragon star arrow, it definitely wouldn't be able to catch up. Thus, Ling Han directly unleashed the ultimate arrow and instantly unleashed all the power in his body. Pooh! The arrow was extraordinarily fast, and there was only a splash of blood. Xiaodonglai released a tragic cry and actually fell from the sky. It was hard to imagine that a 4-star genius at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier would actually be wounded by an arrow from a cultivator at the medium extreme. However, who asked Xiaodonglai to only think of escaping in his desperation? Moreover, he had unleashed the divine seal, thinking that it was absolutely safe, so he naturally relaxed. Who would have thought that there would be such a godly arrow? However, it was precisely because Xiaodonglai was strong enough that the divine seal carried him away that he was fast enough. Otherwise, this arrow wouldn't have merely wounded him, but directly shattered him into pieces. Interesting. The large hand scooped over and grabbed Xiaodonglai. Then, with a turn, it grabbed toward Ling Han. Ling Han had now lost all of his power and couldn't even maintain his adult state. With a PU, he turned into an infant. How could he dare to face this head-on? With a Xiao, he entered into the Black Tower. If he couldn't recover his power, it would be useless for him to come out. The large hand grabbed empty air, and a figure appeared right after. It was a gray-robed man. His figure and appearance were very normal, but his beard was actually strips of flesh that were still wriggling, causing one to shiver, even though it wasn't cold. Xiaodonglai was currently being held in his hand, though he had already lost consciousness. His limbs were dangling, and blood was flowing endlessly. If he had known that this would be the result, he wouldn't have entered deep into the enemy's territory alone, even if he was beaten to death. He had already lost his life. Where is he? The fleshy bearded elite's eyes swept over, and an expression of surprise appeared on his face. This Ling Han had actually disappeared. A mere minor character at the Sun-Moon tier actually managed to make him disappear without a trace, without him noticing. Interesting, he said again. His divine sense spread out, wanting to find Ling Han. Chapter 1293. Ling Han felt that he had already tried his best. The netherworld elites that had died in his hands numbered in the hundreds, and now that he had lost all his power, it was impossible for him to kill the enemy. More importantly, he was now definitely targeted by that elite with the flesh beard, and added with the white-robed elite he had encountered earlier. The two heavenly body tier elites wanted to capture him, so it was better not to show himself for the time being. The Purple Moon Divine Maiden had once promised to take care of the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden on his behalf. This kind of elite kept her word, so Ling Han was not worried that the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden would be harmed in the chaotic battle. After all, the fierce woman was also a top-notch elite, and unless a Heavenly Body tier elite appeared, no one could subdue her. Ling Han began to recover his power. With a pile of true origin stones beside him, he could be very wild inside the Black Tower. Wung. All the pores on his body opened, continuously absorbing the power of the true origin stones, and his dried-up dantian immediately became fertile. An hour later, his origin power was completely recovered, and his physical strength recovered passively. The speed was very fast, and he had recovered to his peak state before his origin power. In the Black Tower, he saw that the elite with a flesh beard did not go far. He stood proudly above, his divine sense spreading out, obviously still searching for his whereabouts. Fuck, he was haunting him. Ling Han simply began to concoct pills. He had nothing to do, so he could not waste time. A day later, he also finished concocting a cauldron of level for alchemical pills, and then saw that the battle had already ended. Both sides had retreated, leaving behind innumerable corpses, and blood staining the ground red. These were all the corpses and blood of gods. If it were not for the fact that the regulations here were too strange, they could definitely nurture a godly medicine. He exited the Black Tower and hurried back to the army camp. This battle caused the immortal realm to suffer heavy losses. The three great armies originally had about 700,000 people, and later, a large number of reinforcements arrived, and the total number of soldiers reached about 1,300,000. However, their overall strength was only similar to that of the Netherworld, because any random soldier of the Netherworld was in the Sun-Moon tier. And after this battle, the number of troops of the immortal realm suddenly dropped to about 800,000. The majority of those who died in battle were in the Mountain River tier, and there was not a small number of Sun-Moon tiers. In fact, 3 heavenly body tiers had died. This shook the entire Cloud Apex planet, and there were even people who suggested asking for help from other planets in the galaxy. This suggestion was immediately rejected. Firstly, it would take at least a month or 2 to travel across the star space, which was too time-consuming. Secondly, it was easier to invite a god in than to send him away. Territory was the most important thing to every force. If they could occupy a piece of land, they would be able to use the power of the nation to increase the strength of the entire army. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, the 2 great imperial empires did not want a third imperial empire to step onto Cloud Apex planet. Furthermore, the current situation was far from being out of control, and the 2 great imperial empires were completely capable of holding on. There was news that the Netherworld had been searching for something in the 2-realm battlefield. This made everyone even more certain that the Netherworld had not come to occupy the Cloud Apex planet, but for the treasures here. Another piece of news was that Xia Donglai was actually still alive. He had been taken as a hostage, and the Xia clan was forced to pay a large number of true origin stones to redeem him. Ling Han was astonished. This guy's life was too tough, wasn't it? He didn't even die. Thinking back, Xia Donglai had used a divine seal to escape and was blasted down by him. Then, he was captured by an elite of the Netherworld. Probably that elite of the Netherworld had also seen that Xia Donglai had used a divine seal and thought that he definitely had a great identity, so he thought of capturing him as a commodity. Ling Han had now become one of the few survivors of the army that he was in. Finally, there were still about a dozen people who had escaped from the heavy encirclement, and all of them cursed Xia Donglai to death. If this guy hadn't been so stubborn, how could they have fallen into a dangerous situation and almost been completely wiped out? However, the people of the Xia clan were obviously very skilled in public relations. Immediately, an opposing opinion appeared. They thought that Xia Donglai was a brave man who could do what others couldn't, and that he was determined to kill the enemy. Furthermore, in order to stay at the back and win a chance of survival for the others, he did not hesitate to fight to the end and be trapped in the enemy's camp. He could still speak so boldly and confidently even after being taken as a hostage. Only a great force like the Xia clan could be so shameless. But since the Xia clan had spoken, who dared to say otherwise? Thus, Xia Donglai became a hero, and heroes naturally couldn't be sacrificed so easily. The Xia clan expressed their agreement to the Netherworld's conditions and took out a large amount of true origin stones to redeem Xia Donglai. However, it was one thing for the Xia clan to portray Xia Donglai as a hero, and it was another matter for the Xia clan to think inside the clan. This time, they had caused them to bleed so much, so how could the Xia clan not punish them? Xia Donglai was immediately summoned back to the clan. As for how he was going to be dealt with, it was not something that outsiders could know. Ling Han sighed ruefully. Even this hadn't killed Xia Donglai. Could it be that this guy was born in the year of the cockroach? However, what he didn't know was that Xie Donglai hated him to the bone. His plan, which should have been foolproof, had been foiled by Ling Han. Moreover, his status in the Xie clan had plummeted because of this. Perhaps he would even become an idle member of the Xie clan. The two armies were in a stalemate, and battles would occasionally erupt. When 2 months had passed, the Netherworld suddenly had a clear target and began to launch a frenzied attack on the Purple Moon Army. Although the 3 great armies were fighting together, it was obviously impossible for them to be mixed up. Thus, the target of the Netherworld's attack was very clear. They were targeting the Purple Moon Army. In order to prove this point, the 3 great armies had deliberately spread out a little, and the result was even more obvious. Could it be that these brats from the Netherworld wanted the women of the immortal realm, and in large numbers? All of a sudden, everyone speculated. There was a very popular theory, and that was that the Netherworld wanted these women in order to give birth to descendants that had the bloodline of the Netherworld and the immortal realm. These people would have the ability to adapt to the regulations of the 2 realms. After a few years, these people would be able to easily infiltrate into the immortal realm and give it a fatal blow. This theory was quite frightening. At first, it sounded very reasonable, but when they thought about it again, it was full of flaws. Putting aside how many years of preparation for this, after these women entered the Netherworld, they would be slowly assimilated. In other words, only the first batch of children would have the ability to accommodate the regulations of the 2 realms at the same time. Moreover, they would have to stay in the 2-realm battlefield all the time. Otherwise, they would definitely be assimilated by the regulations of the Netherworld. With just that batch of people, how many prodigies could they produce? If they weren't prodigies, how much destructive power could they create after sneaking into the immortal realm? Moreover, could the Netherworld really trust these newborns and devote all of their resources to nurture them? At least, Ling Han didn't believe it. He suddenly thought of a possibility. There was a little beast in the Purple Moon Army, and that little beast just happened to be from the Netherworld. What a coincidence. The Netherworld Army was targeting the Purple Moon Army. What if it was because of that little beast? Although it was inconceivable that the little beast only knew how to act cute, there were such coincidences in this world. Not long after the little beast appeared, the Netherworld launched a large-scale invasion, and their target was the Purple Moon Army. Disregarding all impossibilities, no matter how inconceivable the result was, it was the truth. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.